We are live. Okay. Sorry, we're just ever so slightly late, but had to deal with some stuff. But we're live. We're going to be reading The Two Towers today. Let me just see the webcam situation. I'm looking like I'm slightly red here, and I'm going to see if I could fix that. Also, it looks dark, which is... Oh, I don't think I have the second light on. Oh. I think that's my problem more than anything else. Yeah, let me go turn that second light on. Alright, I'll be right back. I'm gonna turn that other light on and see what the deal is there. Because it just seems, yeah, very dark. I'm also going to need my YouTube chat. So let's bring that up. There we go. Oh, hey there, Dylan. How's it going? I'm doing pretty good. Let me just it seems dark. I think I don't have the second light on. I'm gonna go turn that light on. I'll be right back. Won't be gone long. Oh yeah, it's off. Turn it on. Hey, okay. Let's see if that looks better. Yeah, it does look better. Actually, it looks like I belong in Bag End now. Especially when I lean back. The light that's over there, it looks like the light coming out of Bilbo's door. Okay. Well, hello. Hello, everybody. Alright, I need the Twitch chat as well. Why is this so... Oh, there we go. That's better. It is a little darker than it should be. Trust me, I'm used to looking at myself on the preview screen, and I know what it's supposed to look like. And you know, with the everything, the configuration of the desk and all this, and the angle is actually slightly different than it was before because of the new PC. So, still getting used to it. That's exactly why I have this as my background for the stream starting screen. That's exactly why. Alright, I need Twitch chat. Twitch chat is over there, isn't it? I'm gonna have to pop the YouTube one into its own channel. There we go. Alright, that's better. Oh, I'm still getting... Another thing is that I'm still getting used to... it's very comfortable, yes. It's very comfortable. It's just that, you know, the mind forgets and the body remembers. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase, but it's relation to muscle memory. There's certain things that I'm just used to doing that I can no longer do, or that I just have to do differently. And the one big thing that I'm getting used to is having Windows 11. Windows 11 is very different. Okay, I have both chats up now. But yeah, I mean, like, so the computer is actually right over there when it used to be down there. And the monitors are slightly moved over, and the angle of the webcam is slightly different. And it took me like a little while to get the green screen working exactly properly. Also, one big change, and this is something that like just happened. But look, do you notice something that's not happening with my headphones? They're not lit up. And this just happened the other day. They stopped lighting up. And I'm a fan of that, because it's blue light, and that kind of, it's like, it's not green, but it's still kind of messed with the green screen effect. And I was just like, they're not turning on, but I still hear everything and it still sounds good. I was like, oh, they're broken in a very specific way that's cool, you know? So I don't know. Oh, that must be why. There were orcs previously, and now there are no orcs. That makes sense. As for what I had to eat, let's see. For brunch, I had a spicy sausage and egg sandwich. And then for dinner, I had pork chops and french fries. Now, let me go ahead and get the word out that we're live, because I haven't actually done that yet. I need this link. Okay. There we go. Just post on like the different Discords and on social media and whatnot. Yeah. Pork chops were a little overcooked. Well, I did look back on where because it was 3 months ago. It was about 3 months ago when we last did the Two Towers. So I had to go. I was like wondering the same thing. Like, okay, where did we leave off? And it looks like the last stream we did, which was the 4th stream of the Two Towers, we read chapter 6, which is the King of the Golden Hall. And that's, when they come into the Chamber of Theoden. And I just wrote a whole thing about this too. But I also feel like... See, here's the thing. The last live that I could find was 3 months ago, which seems like a long time, was the King of the Golden Hall. But I remember reading Helm's Deep to you guys. So there might have been a situation where I read Helm's Deep, but instead of having up as a live, it may have been up as a video. So I'm actually going to look into that. It wasn't in the playlist, but I remember doing it. And as a matter of fact, I even remember specifically getting a comment saying, "Did you skip King of the Golden Hall?" And I said, "I don't think I did. But I'll look into it when I have a computer." And I know I didn't skip the King of the Golden Hall. So I know it was live, but it may not be on the channel as a live. Okay, so now if I look at my list of lives here, I see the Council of Tolkien. I see all the phone streams I did. This one says live channel updates, announcement, quiz review, fundraising. That was the last one on the old PC. There's where I'm playing Fellowship of the Ring. There's Council of Tolkien. And there's Two Towers reading and analysis. Wait, that says part 4. But today we were doing part 4. Oh, did I just not see that? Hey, Medio. And hey, Speak Up. How's it going? I think this is the Helm's Deep one. And that it's not in the playlist. And that means that the chapter thing is wrong. It should say part 5. It should be part 5. I don't know if I can fix that. It'll have to fix I'll have to fix it afterwards. What would a nameless thing energy drink be like? Dark, and deep, and spacey. Moria Mine Water. Oh dear. Hey, well, thank you, Spielkopf as well. Yeah, new computer. It's Windows 11, which, yeah. Well, if you could describe it, then it wouldn't really be nameless, then, would it? Okay, so it looks like, if you're watching on YouTube, it says reading and analysis part 4. It should say part 5. That's my mistake. This is part 5. So we did do Helm's Deep. I thought we did. I thought that was the case. I need to make the... Okay, that's better. I'm going to make that bigger. Ba, 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 You can tell I've heard all 10 hours of this playlist like way too much for recording my videos. Episode 130, it was a little louder than I thought it was in the recording, and I was like, "Oh, it's kind of loud," but it's still like but I'm very clear in it, so that's what matters. We'll fix it for episode 131. What is P mode? I don't even know what that is. They said I am now using it. No, and hey, we have Gray, and I'm sorry, I had the Twitch thing was hidden. Gray and Sarah and Alice, how's it going? What a day! What a day! Yeah. How's it going, everybody? What is P mode in Windows 11? I don't know what that is. Unless I'm walking into a joke. Oh, it's S mode. Okay, I still don't know what that is. What is S mode? What? Oh, you don't use Windows anymore? What are you, a Linux person? Okay, so that being said, we don't read so we have to safe mode. That's different. No, safe. If you're talking about safe mode, that's where you go if you're having an issue. All right, so it looks like we're actually. Did we read The Road to Isengard? See, I thought I looked at the last VOD, but it turned out I was looking at the one before that. So I actually am not entirely sure where we left off. I thought 3 months ago seemed like too much. I mean, I know what safe mode is and what it does, but generally, yeah. Yeah, but what was it, Medio? Is it safe mode or is it something else? Because I've never heard of that. I wonder if I can edit the... I can't edit the live. I don't know how to do that on YouTube. Yeah, I actually don't... Alright. I need to look at the last one and see if we had done Flotsam and Jetsam or The Road to Isengard. I don't think we did The Road to Isengard. We might have done Flotsam and Jetsam. It was a long stream. Alright, I'm gonna just, give me a moment here, guys. Because I don't want to reread, I don't want to retread old ground. This is the danger of, I'm gonna stop the music. This is the danger of coming back after many weeks, is you're just sort of, this is like Gandalf and Moria, right? I have no memory of this place. I don't know where I am. There are 3 paths. It's an additional annoying mode you got with your last Windows laptop, and you had to disable it to fully access the internet. Okay. I guess you're not really explaining it that well, but I think you might be talking about safe mode, which I don't know why you would be booted in safe mode all the time. Let me, see, now I can't see Twitch. Hey, Coyote. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to look into it. Yeah, I know we didn't do the voice of Saruman. That's 100%. We definitely did not do that one. Here, I'll spell it for you. That's Isengard. Right, let me look into this. First, I want to see what S mode is. Let's see what... Oh. So it's not exactly safe mode, but it's like a very lockdown experience. Sounds really annoying. Okay, that sounds terrible. I would not want to have that. Okay, I am going to... I have the old... the last time we were here.
I've been excited.
Oh, it's playing an ad. Let me mute that. I'm just going to look at where we left off. I can't be mad at ads being on my own videos. All right, here I am. Because he's only showing them a vision of the world. Now I'm going to skip ahead just 2 pages to the part where he actually creates the world. Oh, I'm reading the Silmarillion there. I remember doing that. Let me back up a bit. And I would believe him in the South Farthing, who first grew the true pipeweed in his garden. Okay, I know exactly where we... Okay. So that was the section where Mary was talking to Theoden about pipeweed, which means that we did read Flotsam and Jetsam. Yeah. Okay. So we're actually going to start with Chapter 10, The Voice of Saruman. Yeah. Yes, Alice, you can absolutely do that. So, for anybody out there, let me set this up. Actually, you could do it. You could do it now if you want. For anybody, let me set this up for you. So you guys know Alice is my moderator both on YouTube and on Twitch. And by the way, Alice, since you're watching on Twitch, how is the quality of the stream? Because for whatever reason, I'm watching it and it seems fine, but Twitch is telling me that it's unstable and it's a low bit rate and there's all these problems. But from my end, everything looks good. Okay, good. Good to hear. So you guys know Alice. Alice is a moderator on my YouTube channel, a moderator on my Twitch channel, and on my Discord as well. And they had a terrible thing happen, and we're gonna have we have a GoFundMe link now. It's not like my GoFundMe where it was a lot of money. This is less money, but what happened is basically, all right. I have to set this up. So Alice has had a rough year. Their apartment burned down late last year, and they had to live in a hotel for a while, and then after that they had to find a new place, and they managed to find a new place and everything, but at some point their PlayStation 5 stopped functioning properly. So and this is not just used for video games. This is they don't have a smart TV, so this is how they watch, television and apps. Can't watch television without the PlayStation. So basically, they sent it for repair, and it got stolen, probably by a FedEx employee. And there's been a police report that has been filed, and and like I said, it's just a rough situation, but at this point, it doesn't seem like there's any justice or recompense that's going to come from FedEx or from Sony or from the police. So if you have a little bit of money, and I like I said, this is right before the holidays, I understand, but the GoFundMe link is there in the YouTube chat, and I'm sure they're going to put it into the Twitch chat as well, and just to help them out, because it's just it's a rough situation right before the holidays. And there it is in the Twitch chat as well. Okay, and thank you, Sarah, as well, because like I said, for some reason, ever since I got the new computer, and I don't think it actually has anything to do with the new computer, I think it has to do with the streaming software that I use, because there was a really, really big update to it. And it's a little different, but it's functioning. But this happened last week on Thursday during the Council of Tolkien, and I thought it might have been just a Twitch issue. But what was happening was, every time that I broadcast to both YouTube and to Twitch, on my Twitch dashboard, I see the bitrate is in red, and it's telling me that the stream is unstable. But I'm also watching the stream. I have it muted, but I'm watching it, and the quality is fine, and there's no stuttering or anything. So I think that's just not true, basically, and that it's fine. But I did want to ask if the quality of the stream on Twitch was good. I know it's good on YouTube, because I'm not having any issues there. All right, so to catch everybody up, let's come over here, because we're going to read the Two Towers. We are going to be starting with, we're on Chapter 10 of Book 3. And just sort of explain it. Each volume of The Lord of the Rings, there's 3 of them. There is The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. And each of them comprises of 2 books. So each half, basically. So The Two Towers is Book 3 and Book 4, while The Return of the King is Book 5 and 6. There's 6 books to The Lord of the Rings. So yes, I know it's been so long, but we are back. We're in Rivendell here. We're in Rivendell, sitting in one of the side rooms, and a nice crackling fire and a the giant specter of a book beside me. So we read through Helm's Deep, where Saruman's forces attacked Rohan, and they were repelled by the forces of Rohan and flanked by Gandalf with some more of Rohan's warriors, Erkenbrand and the soldiers of the West Fold. And they were also backed up by a magical forest that appeared out of nowhere, which the king, Theoden, assumed was something that Gandalf cooked up. It turned out he had nothing to do with it, and that was Treebeard. Treebeard brought the Huarns, which are the walking trees. And we talked a lot about pipeweed, and we talked a lot about the creation of the universe. We got into that because I read a little bit of the Silmarillion for you guys, just a little tiny bit. But anyway, guys, we are going to go on to Chapter 10, The Voice of Saruman. They passed through the ruined tunnel and stood upon a heap of stones, gazing at the dark rock of Orthanc and its many windows, a menace still in the desolation that lay all about it. The waters had now nearly all subsided. Here and there gloomy pools remained, covered with scum and wreckage, but most of the wide circle was bare again, a wilderness of slime and tumbled rock, pitted with blackened holes and dotted with posts and pillars leaning drunkenly this way and that. At the rim of the shattered bowl there lay vast mounds and slopes like the shingles cast up by a great storm, and beyond them the green and tangled valley ran up into the long ravine between the dark arms of the mountains. Across the waste they saw riders picking their way. They were coming from the north side, and already they were drawing near to Orthanc. "There is Gandalf and Theoden and his men," said Legolas. "Let us go and meet them." "Walk warily," said Merry. "There are loose slabs, and it may tilt up and throw you down into a pit if you don't take care." They followed what was left of the road from the gates to Orthanc, going slowly, for the flagstones were cracked and slimed. The riders, seeing them approach, halted under a shadow of the rock and waited for them. Gandalf rode forward to meet them. "Well, Treebeard and I have had some interesting discussions, and made a few plans," he said. "And we have all had some much-needed rest. Now we must be going on again. I hope your companions have all rested too, and refreshed yourself." "We have," said Merry, "but our discussion began and ended in smoke. Still, we feel less ill-disposed toward Saruman than we did." "Do you indeed?" said Gandalf. "Well, I do not. I have now a last talk to do before I go. I must pay Saruman a farewell visit. Dangerous, and probably useless, but it must be done. Those of you who wish may come with me, but beware, and do not jest. This is not the time for it." "I will come," said Gimli. "I wish to see him, and learn if he really looks like you." "And how will you learn that, Master Dwarf?" said Gandalf. "Saruman could look like me to your eyes if it suited his purpose with you." "And are you yet wise enough to detect all his counterfeits? Well, we shall see, perhaps. He may be shy of showing himself before many different eyes together, but I have ordered all the Ents to remove themselves from sight, so perhaps we shall persuade him to come out." "What's the danger?" said Pippin. "Will he shoot at us and pour fire out the windows, or can he put a spell on us from a distance?" "The last is the most likely if you ride to his door with a light heart," said Gandalf. "But there is no knowing what he could do, or may choose to try. A wild beast cornered is not safe to approach, and Saruman has powers you do not guess. Beware of his voice." Okay, let me pause here because I see some questions and stuff coming in. Brad Dourif was amazing as Wormtongue. Brad, he is a great actor, and I think he did a great job playing the character, even though I felt like they shortchanged the character a little bit, and I talk about that in episode 130, by basically making it look like Saruman was sort of doing everything himself instead of having Wormtongue do it for him. So could Saruman change shape or change to look like someone else? That's what I actually paused to talk about. What's up, Alice? You're going bruh right now. Hey, Moogle. I wanted to say that it is mentioned. Oh, well, that's... He shouldn't do that. He might be trying to apologize, but we're streaming here. Let's talk about that here. But yeah, don't... Jesus. All right. Anyway, it is mentioned in The Hobbit, actually, that Radagast the Brown can change his shape because Gandalf calls him a master of hue and shape. And what that essentially means is that he's a shapeshifter. Now, I had a really interesting question come through, and I believe it's featured in my YouTube show at episode 129, which is now available for everybody, not just members. And basically, the person asked, which is a pretty insightful question, but they were very close to the answer themselves when they asked it, I thought, where they said, well, it says in the Silmarillion that all of the angels, the Valar, the Maiar, all of them, wear their bodies like clothes. And so, of course, they can change them. They could take off their clothes and be invisible, or they could put on a different outfit and shape themselves in visions of dread and majesty, or they could look like elves or whatever. So why is it that Tolkien draws attention to the fact that Sauron is a shapeshifter? And I said, well, that's the thing. Anybody could take off their clothes and put on different clothes. But can you change your clothes without taking them off? Can you change the clothes that you're wearing? Because that's what Sauron does, and that's what Radagast does. Now, what Gandalf is saying here hints that Saruman has this ability as well. And it's been hinted that Gandalf himself has a limited form of this ability, and the wizards being able to change what they look like is incredibly, incredibly powerful magic because they are in real bodies. They are incarnates. So they can't change their clothes. I mean, they can if they're shapeshifter, but they can't take off the body and then put a new one on. They have to deal with the one that they have. I think that out of all of the wizards, the one that has the greatest power of changing the way that he looks is definitely Radagast the Brown. 100%. And yes, illusion and alteration. Absolutely, Alice. We get these instances where Gandalf, especially when he's becoming stern, grows bigger. And so that itself is a form of changing your shape. Maybe it doesn't change what you look like, but it changes the perception that he seems to grow very large and fill up, the hall of Bag End. And then when he calms down, he goes back to his normal height. And Gandalf's not very tall, you know what I mean? He's not as tall as like Boromir or Aragorn, for example, So what Gandalf is saying here is, well, we don't know what we're walking into. We don't know what the situation is. We don't know what kind of mood Saruman's going to be in. We don't know if he might try to play some sort of trick on us. We don't know what he's going to do. Now, Saruman was said in the book Unfinished Tales, it was said that he had traveled many times to the Shire, of all places. And you would think, well, why does he go to the Shire? And it had to do with one of the meetings that they had with the White Council. And at the White Council meeting, Saruman, he's in charge. Galadriel used to be in charge, but she decided to cede her leadership. She wanted to cede it to Gandalf, but Saruman is like, I outrank him, So Saruman became in charge of the White Council. And during the meeting, he's doing all the talking, and Gandalf is just sitting there smoking his pipe. And this is the first time that Saruman has seen Gandalf smoking. He pulls him aside after the meeting, and he's like, hey, I don't really like that I'm talking and you're not really paying attention to me and you're just fiddling with your inventions. And Gandalf says, I am paying attention to you. I'm just smoking, and I didn't invent it. There's these people that live in the West called hobbits, and they came up with the idea of smoking, and it's really quite wonderful. It helps me clear my mind and everything. And you have to remember, this is Tolkien speaking through Gandalf. The link between smoking and all the terrible things, hey Chewie, all the terrible things that it leads to, all the health issues, that was out there in the 50s when The Lord of the Rings was published. But I think Tolkien might have been one of those, it's all a bunch of claptrap, smoking, it was wonderful, So that's my Tolkien impression. But anyway, so he's pro pipe smoking because Tolkien is pro pipe smoking. And what's really interesting is that Saruman, he doesn't like that there is there's something that he doesn't know about. So he went to the Shire to see what this pipeweed stuff is all about. And we're going to learn a little bit about that, with Merry and Pippin finding, what basically amounts to his stash and the trade routes that he had up through Dunland. But he had went to the Shire. But one thing that Unfinished Tales, the Flintstones ad. What brand cigarettes was that the Flintstones were shilling for? I've seen the ad. I've seen the cartoon, but I don't remember what brand it was. A really, really disgusting sort of thing that they made that ad. Saruman was Winston. Okay, thank you, Alice. Saruman was a smoker, but he was ashamed by it and he hid it, whereas Gandalf is just lighting up everywhere. But what's really, really interesting is we learn that when Saruman went to the Shire, remember, he doesn't want people to know about this. He made himself look like Gandalf. Now, we could take that as meaning that he just wore gray robes and that the hobbits are like, all these big people all look the same. That must be that Gandalf over there. A lot of them never really saw Gandalf up close, so they're seeing a tall, from their perspective, tall, old wizard wearing gray robes and a blue hat and a silver scarf, and they think it's Gandalf, right? It could have just been a disguise. But here, in this chapter, what we've just read is Gandalf specifically telling Gimli, well, you want to see if he looks like me, because this is the rumor that he's heard. How are you going to tell? What is he going to look like? I think that Gandalf has cottoned on to the fact that Saruman has put on a disguise. Now, this could be, like I said, it could be just as simple as wearing gray robes and wearing a blue hat, or he could have literally made himself look like Gandalf. We don't really know, but it certainly seems to me that he's saying that Gandalf does have a power to project what you might call a glamour. Not necessarily literally changing shape like Radagast can, but putting it into your mind that he looks like Gandalf. And that, I think, is what he does, because Saruman, he's all about fooling people, dominating their minds and making them think what he wants them to think. Now we're going to continue here. They came now to the foot of Orthanc. It was black, and the rock gleamed as if it were wet. The many faces of the stone had sharp edges, as though they had been newly chiseled. A few scorings and small flake-like splinters near the base were all the marks that it bore of the fury of the Ents. On the eastern side, in the angle of the two piers, there was a great door, high above the ground, and over it was a shuttered window opening upon a balcony hedged with iron bars. Up to the threshold of the door there mounted a flight of 27 broad stairs, hewn by some unknown art of the same black stone. This was the only entrance to the tower, but many tall windows were cut with deep embrasures in the climbing walls. Far up they peered like little eyes in the sheer faces of the horns. I'm going to pause here, not to really talk about lore, but the fox that passed could have been Radagast. So that's an interesting thought, and I think that you could come to like sort of a sub-creative conclusion there, right? The only question is, how did it wind up in Frodo's memoirs when he was asleep, right? I love the idea. Personally, I've always been under the impression that Radagast did become some sort of animal and, disappeared. I've always thought that he would become like a deer, though. That's the form that I think that he would become. But that's a cool thought. There is nothing in the Lord of the Rings, Coyote, that says that that's not true, and there's nothing that says that it is true. So this is sort of one of those surmises, what they call fanon. Moogle, could you ban that guy, please? Turns out Radagast was Bill the Pony the whole time. I would think not. I know you're joking, but I just want to point out that that's impossible because there's no way that he would allow himself to be mistreated in Bree, right? But anyway, has anybody in the chat read? This is a different fantasy series by Stephen King called The Dark Tower. Oh, thank you, Alice. You got it. Okay, Moogle must have stepped away. Has anybody read The Dark Tower? There were 8 of them. Well, initially there were 7, and there was an 8th one. Yeah. So Alice, you've read it. I just want to see if anybody else has. There was an 8th one that came out later that you're supposed to read between parts 4 and 5. But anyway, for anybody that doesn't know, The Dark Tower is a really sort of like grand fantasy tale mixed with a bit of Western and a lot of science fiction. And it's just so bizarre and strange, and I would recommend anybody to read it because it's a lot of fun. Of course, it does break your heart towards the end because that's what Stephen King usually does. But anyway, if you've ever read The Dark Tower, and it was published over a period of many, many years, because he wrote the first 3, and then it was a long period before the 4th one came out, which was Demons and Wizards. I'm sorry, no, I said what you wrote, Wizard and Glass. Demons and Wizards, I have that album. Wizard and Glass. And then there was another long period before the next one came out, the Wolves of the Kala. And then the last 3 came out in rapid succession, and that was the conclusion. And then there was another really long period, and he wrote a prequel story called The Little Sisters of Eluria, and then he wrote The Wind Through the Keyhole, which is like part 4.5. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I read the first volume of The Dark Tower, which was called The Gunslinger, when I was a young boy. I was about 12 years old. As a matter of fact, it was really not that long after I first read The Lord of the Rings. I had read The Hobbit many times, and this is around when I first read The Lord of the Rings, and then I read the Gunslinger. So I was young, and then I was a full adult when the final chapter, The Dark Tower, came out. And so, it had been decades of following this character of Roland Deschain and his quest to find the Dark Tower. And it really feels like, I remember I stayed up till like 4 a.m. finishing the last book. Could not put it down at that point because I was so close. And when we get to the description of what the Dark Tower actually looks like, there had been many, many artistic depictions of what it might look like. But since nobody had seen it yet, it wasn't described in the books. But when we got to that point, when Roland first, he was walking through, not Empathica, but the Field of Roses beyond Empathica. I forget what it was called. And he crests a hill and he first sees the tower. And he describes what it looks like. It's very similar to the description of Orthanc, which is really interesting, And yes, that's exactly what it is. Matt's description of what the Dark Tower is very accurate. It's a linchpin that connects a multiverse. And almost all of his stories play into that in one way or another. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up that, Stephen King is a writer that wears his influences on his sleeve. He is not shy about doing a version of another author's work. One of his very first Cancano Re, yes. One of his very first novels was a vampire story called Salem's Lot, and he said, "This is my take on Dracula." And if you read it, you can even see which characters in Salem's Lot line up with which characters in Dracula. Dada chum, dada chick, dada chuck. I actually, okay, so I am a big Stephen King fan. I actually will walk around sometimes going, dada chick, dada chuck. So anyway, I always thought that the physical description of the Dark Tower matched the physical description of Orthanc, and I think he was doing that on purpose, because he even said that the idea of the Dark Tower was, what if the Lord of the Rings was a Western? And that's how it started, at least. It started as, what if the Lord of the Rings was a Western, and it ended up with multiverse, science fiction, comic book stuff, But I wanted to bring that up because I was just thinking of the Dark Tower not too long ago, and here's this description of what Orthanc actually looks like, and one of the two towers, so to speak, although that's a confusing mess. We talked about that already. And I was thinking, if you've ever read The Dark Tower, Volume 7, The Dark Tower, and you get to that moment where it's finally described, even with the balcony, with the iron bars and everything, where Saruman comes out and speaks on this balcony, much like the Crimson King comes out and, well, he doesn't really speak. He screams and throws grenades. He's a kind of a maniac. But the description of the Crimson King is like if you took Saruman and Santa Claus and the devil and kind of mushed them all together. But it's sort of this idea also that the Crimson King had become trapped in the tower is an allusion, I think, to what's going to happen here, is that Saruman is going to wind up trapped in his own tower for a time. He does escape. The end fate of Saruman is pretty grim, as we know. Although I would say the Crimson King's fate might have actually been worse, because he literally got erased. And that's rough to think about, Everything but his eyes was erased, because Stephen King has this weird fascination with eyes. Let's continue. I just wanted to bring up that, this is an incredibly influential bit that we just wrote, because this tower, the idea of a dark tower, is not something that Tolkien invented. This is an old thing, but the idea of Orthanc specifically is on there. Also, you do need to read The Dark Tower, but do yourself the biggest favor, Matt. Do not watch the film. I went to go see it when it was in the theater, and I was just flabbergasted. I was like, okay, I thought it was going to be based off like the first book, and what I got was they mashed the first book, the third book, and the seventh book into this abomination. This 90-minute movie that just kept going from one scene to the next without any sort of like connection between it. Nothing made sense, The only part that I thought was cool was the part where Roland explains the multiverse and the Todash darkness to Jake. But I couldn't get over how bad the movie was. It was so bad. Hopefully we get some kind of like good adaptation of that at some point in the future, right? yeah, that film was so redacted, exactly. All right, let's continue here. Oh, you enjoyed it as an ignorant mess? Yeah, I guess that's fair. I enjoyed the performances of the actors involved. Idris Elba was very good. Matthew McConaughey was very good. But other than that, what a mess of a script. Okay, let's continue. At the foot of the stairs, Gandalf and the king dismounted. "I will go up," said Gandalf. "I have been in Orthanc, and I know my peril." "And I too will go up," said the king. "I am old, and fear no peril any more. I wish to speak with the enemy who has done me so much wrong. Eomer shall come with me, and see that my aged feet do not falter." "As you will," said Gandalf. "Aragorn shall come with me. Let the others await at the foot of the stairs. They will hear and see enough, if there is anything to hear or see." "Nay," said Gimli, "Legolas and I wish for a closer view. We alone here represent our kindreds. We will also come behind." "Come then," said Gandalf. And with that he climbed the steps, and Theoden went beside him. The riders of Rohan sat uneasily upon their horses on either side of the stair, and looked up darkly at the great tower, fearing what might befall their lord. Merry and Pippin sat at the bottom step, feeling both unimportant and unsafe. "Half a sticky mile from here to the gate," muttered Pippin. "Oh, I wish I could slip off back to the guard-room unnoticed. What did we come for?" "We're not wanted." "Hey there, King Thors." Gandalf stood before the door of Orthanc and beat on it with his staff. It rang with a hollow sound. "Saruman! Saruman!" he cried in a loud, commanding voice. "Saruman, come forth!" For some time there was no answer. At last the window above the door was unbarred, but no figure could be seen at its dark opening. "Who is it?" said a voice. "What do you wish?" Oh, this was that should be Grima, actually. "Who is it?" said a voice. "What do you wish?" Theoden started. "I know that voice," he said, "and I curse the day when I first listened to it." "Go and fetch Saruman, since you have become his footman, Grima Wormtongue," said Gandalf, "and do not waste our time." The window closed. They waited. Suddenly another voice spoke, low and melodious, its very sound an enchantment. Those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered, for little power remained in them. Mostly they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking. All that it said seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. When others spoke, they seemed harsh and uncouth by contrast. And if they gainsaid the voice, anger was kindled in the hearts of those under the spell. For some, the spell lasted only while the voice spoke to them, and when it spoke to another they smiled as men do when they see through a juggler's trick, while others gape at it. For many, the sound of the voice alone was enough to hold them enthralled, but for those whom it conquered the spell endured when they were far away, and ever they heard that soft voice whispering and urging them. But none were unmoved. None rejected its pleas and its commands without an effort of mind and will, as long as its master had control of it. "Well," it said now with gentle question, "why must you disturb my rest? Will you give me no peace at all by night or day?" Its tone was that of a kindly heart aggrieved by injuries undeserved. They looked up, astonished, for they had heard no sound of his coming, and they saw a figure standing at the rail looking down upon them, an old man swathed in a great cloak, the color of which was not easy to tell, for it changed if they moved their eyes or if he stirred. His face was long, with a high forehead. He had a deep, darkling eyes, hard to fathom, though the look that they had now bore was grave and benevolent, and a little weary. His hair and beard were white, but strands of black still showed about his lips and ears. "Like and yet unlike," muttered Gimli. "But come now," said the soft voice. "Two at least of you I know by name. Gandalf I know too well to have much hope that he seeks help or counsel here. But you, Theoden, Lord of the Mark of Rohan, are declared by your noble devices, and still more by the fair countenance of the house of Eorl. O worthy son of Thengel the thrice-renowned, why have you not come before, and as a friend? Much have I desired to see you, mightiest king of western lands, and especially in these later years to save you from the unwise and evil counsels that beset you. Is it yet too late, despite the injuries that you have done to me, in which the men of Rohan, alas, have some part? Still I would save you,
and deliver you from the ruin that draws nigh inevitably if you ride upon this road which you have taken. Indeed, I alone can aid you now."
Theoden opened his mouth as if to speak, but he said nothing. He looked up at the face of Saruman with its dark, solemn eyes bent down upon him, and then to Gandalf at his side, and he seemed to hesitate. Gandalf made no sign, but stood silent as stone, as one waiting patiently for some call that has not yet come. The riders stirred at first, murmuring with approval of the words of Saruman. And then they too were silent, as men spellbound. It seemed to them that Gandalf had never spoken so fair and fittingly to their lord. Rough and proud now seemed all his dealings with Theoden, and over their hearts crept a shadow, the fear of a great danger, the end of the mark in a darkness to which Gandalf was driving them, while Saruman stood beside a door of escape, holding it half open so that a ray of life came through. There was a heavy silence. It was Gimli the dwarf who broke in suddenly.
"The words of this wizard stand on their heads," he growled, gripping the handle of his axe. "In the language of Orthanc, help means ruin, and saving means slaying, that is plain. But we do not come here to beg."
"Peace," said Saruman, and for a fleeting moment his voice was less suave, and a light flickered in his eyes and was gone.
"I do not speak to you yet, Gimli, Gloin's son," he said. "Far away is your home, and small concern of yours are the troubles of this land. But it was not by design of your own that you have become embroiled in them, and so I will not blame such part as you have played, a valiant one, I doubt not. But I pray you allow me first to speak with the King of Rohan, my neighbour, and once my friend. What have you to say, Theoden King? Will you have peace with me, and all the aid that my knowledge, founded in long years, can bring? Shall we make our counsels together against evil days, and repair our injuries with such good that our estates shall both come to fairer flower than ever before?"
Still Theoden did not answer. Whether he strove with anger or doubt, none could say. Eomer spoke. "Lord, hear me," he said. "Now we feel the peril that we were warned of. Have we ridden forth to victory only to stand last amazed by an old liar, with honey on his forked tongue? So would the trapped wolf speak to the hounds if he could. What aid can he give you, forsooth? All he desires to is escape from his plight. But will you parley with this dealer of treachery and murder? Remember Theodred at the ford, and the grave of Hama in Helm's Deep." Gimli just had salted pork, which grants +5 to willpower. Nice. A movie reference, but a good one. And thank you for the compliments on the Saruman voice, yeah. Imagine that Saruman's ring gave him the perfect hair forever effect. I mean, honestly, it's just not that different from what he's doing, really. Not that different. Thank you for all the likes I'm seeing. Thank you very much.
"If we speak of poisoned tongues, what shall we say of yours, young serpent?" said Saruman, and the flash of his anger was now plain to see. "But come, Eomer, Eomer's son," he went on with his soft voice again. "To every man his part. Valor in arms is yours, and you win high honour thereby. Slay whom your lord names as enemies, and be content. Meddle not in policies which you do not understand. But maybe, if you become a king, you'll find that he must choose his friends with care. The friendship of Saruman and the power of Orthanc cannot be lightly thrown aside, whatever grievances real or fancied may lie beyond. You have won a battle, but not a war, and that will help on what you cannot count again. You may find the shadow of the wood at your own door next. It is wayward and senseless, and has no love for men." So, I think it's really interesting here. What he's saying is, hey, those Ents, right? They might turn on you someday.
And the only one yet, because Theoden's going to do it, but the only one so far who really came and said, hey, you were the one that attacked Rohan, was Gimli. Gimli is just so unbothered by this. He's so strong that the voice of Saruman really doesn't have an effect on him. But we're about to find out what Theoden is made of here.
But, my lord of Rohan, am I to be called a murderer, because valiant men have fallen in battle? If you go to war needlessly, for I did not desire it, then men will be slain. But if I am a murderer on that account, then all the house of Eorl is stained with murder. For they have fought many wars, and assailed many who defied them. Yet with some they have afterwards made peace, none the worse for being politic. I say, Theoden King, shall we have peace and friendship, you and I? It is ours to command.
A Saruman-themed ASMR channel? I don't think I could do that voice for very long. I could get through this, but it's very difficult to speak like this, There are some voices that come naturally to me. That is not one of them. We will have peace, said Theoden at last, thickly and with effort. Several of the riders cried out gladly. Theoden held up his hand. Yes, we will have peace, he said, now in a clear voice. We will have peace, when you and all your works have perished, and the works of your dark master to whom you would deliver us. You are a liar, Saruman, and a corrupter of men's hearts. You hold out your hand to me, and I perceive only a finger of the claw of Mordor, cruel and cold. Even if your war on me was just, and it was not. For were you 10 times as wise, you would have no right to rule me and mine for your own profit as you desired. Even so, what will you say of your torches in Westfold, and the children that lie dead there? And they hewed Hama's body before the gates of the Hornburg after he was dead. When you hang from a gibbet at your window for the sport of your own crows, I will have peace with you in Orthanc. So much for the house of Eorl. A lesser son of great Assayas am I, but I do not need to lick your fingers. Turn elsewhither. But I fear your voice has lost its charm. The riders gazed up at Theoden like men startled out of a dream. Harsh as an old raven, their master's voice sounded in their ears after the music of Saruman. But Saruman, for a while, was beside himself with wrath. He leaned over the rail, as if he would smite the king with his staff. To some, suddenly it seemed that they saw a snake coiling itself to strike.
Gibbets and crows,
he hissed, and they shuddered at the hideous change.
Dotted! What is the house of Earl but a thatched barn, where brigands drink and the reek and their brats roll on the floor among the dogs? Too long have they escaped the gibbet themselves. But the noose comes slow in the drawing, tight and hard in the end. Hang if you will.
Now his voice changed as he slowly mastered himself.
I know not why I have the patience to speak to you, for I need you not, nor your little band of gallopers as swift to fly as if to advance Theoden horse, master. Long have I offered you a state beyond your merit and your wit. I have offered again, so that those whom you misled may clearly see the choice of roads. You give me brag and abuse. So be it. Go back to your huts.
And yet, that's actually, Dylan, he's crashing out hard. Because this is really, he knows this is his last shot. He's never going to surrender. That's not in his nature. He will never supplicate himself to Gandalf willingly. He will never do that because he's so proud and so arrogant. Everything about him is pride and arrogance. And now he's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to convince the king that he's been foolish and that I'm going to trick him into thinking he was the aggressor in this war that we've had, and he's going to join me, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to get away with it. And the king is too strong for him. Theoden is too strong for him. Gimli's too strong for him. You know, Éomer, way too strong for him. His best magic is worthless at this point. So yeah, he's crashing out real hard. He's freaking out.
And this voice that he's developed that soothes people's minds becomes this.
You know. So there you have it. Let's continue along here. Gandalf stirred and looked up.
What have you to say?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed a part here.
But you, Gandalf, for you, at last I am grieved, feeling for your shame. How comes it that you can endure such company? For you are proud, Gandalf, and not without reason, having a noble mind and eyes that look both deep and far. Even now, will you not listen to my counsel?
Gandalf stirred and looked up.
What have you to say that you did not say at our last meeting? He asked. Or perhaps you have things to unsay.
Saruman paused.
Unsay, he mused, as if puzzled. Unsay. I endeavoured to advise you for your own good, but you scarcely listened. You are proud and do not love advice, having indeed a store of your own wisdom, but on that occasion you erred, I think, misconstruing my intentions wilfully. I fear that in my eagerness to persuade you I lost patience, and indeed I regret it, for I bore you no ill will, and even now I bear none, though you return to me in the company of the violent and the ignorant. How should I? Are we not both members of a high and ancient order, most excellent in Middle-earth? Our friendship would profit us both alike. Much we could still accomplish together to heal the disorders of the world. Let us understand one another and dismiss from thought these lesser folk. Let them wait on our decisions. For the common good I am willing to redress your past and receive you. Will you not consult with me? Will you not come up?
So great was the power that Saruman exerted in this last effort that none stood within hearing were unmoved. But now the spell was wholly different. They heard the gentle remonstrance of a kindly king with an erring but much-loved minister, but they were shut out, listening at a door to words not meant for them, ill-mannered children or stupid servants overhearing the elusive discourse of their elders, and wondering how it could affect their lot. Of loftier mould these two were made, revered and wise. It was inevitable that they should make alliance. Gandalf would ascend to the tower to discuss deep things beyond their comprehension in the high chambers of Orthanc. The door would be closed, and they would be left outside, dismissed to await allotted work or punishment. Even in the mind of Theoden the thought took shape like a shadow of doubt. He will betray us. He will go. We shall be lost. Then Gandalf laughed. The fantasy vanished like a puff of smoke.
Saruman, Saruman, said Gandalf, still laughing. Saruman, you missed your path in life. You should have been the king's jester and earned your bread and stripes, too, by mimicking his counsellors. Oh, me. He paused, getting the better of his mirth. Understand one another. I fear I am beyond your comprehension. But you, Saruman, I understand now too well. I keep a clearer memory of your arguments and deeds than you suppose. When last I visited you, you were the jailer of Mordor, and there I was to be sent. Nay, the guest who has escaped from the roof will think twice before he comes back in by the door. Nay, I do not think I will come up, but listen, Saruman, for the last time. Will you not come down? Isengard has proved less strong than your hope and fancy made it. So may other things in which you still have trust. Would it not be well to leave it for a while? To turn to new things, perhaps? Think well, Saruman. Will you not come down? A shadow passed over Saruman's face, then it went deathly white. Before he could conceal it, they saw through the mask the anguish of a mind in doubt, loathing to stay and dreading to leave its refuge. For a second he hesitated,
and no one breathed. Then he spoke, and his voice was shrill and cold. Pride and hate were conquering him.
"Will I come down?" he mocked. "Does an unarmed man come down to speak with robbers out of doors? I can hear you well enough here. I am no fool, and I do not trust you, Gandalf. They do not stand openly on my stairs, and I know where the wild wood demons are lurking at your command."
"The treacherous are ever distrustful," answered Gandalf wearily.
"But you need not fear for your skin. I do not wish to kill you or hurt you, as you would know if you really understood me. And I have the power to protect you. I am giving you a last chance. You can leave Orthanc, free, if you choose." "That sounds well," sneered Saruman. "Very much in the matter of Gandalf the Grey, so condescending and so very kind. I do not doubt that you could find Orthanc commodious and my departure convenient, but why should I wish to leave? And what do you mean by free? There are conditions, I presume." "Reasons for leaving you could see from your windows," answered Gandalf. "Others will occur to your thought. Your servants are destroyed and scattered. Your neighbors you have made your enemies, and you have cheated your new master, or tried to do so. When his eye turns hither, it will be the red eye of wrath. But when I say free, I mean free. Free from bond of chain or command, to go where you will, even to Mordor, Saruman, if you desire. But you will first surrender to me the key of Orthanc and your staff. They shall be pledges of your conduct, to be returned later, if you merit them." Saruman's face grew livid, twisted with rage, and a red light was kindled in his eyes. He laughed wildly. "Later!" he cried, and his voice rose to a scream. "Later! Yes! When you have ousted the king of Barad-dûr itself, I suppose, and the crowns of 7 kings, and the rods of the 5 wizards, and have purchased yourself a pair of boots many sizes larger than those you wear now. A modest plan, hardly one in which my help is needed. I have other things to do. Do not be a fool. If you wish to treat with me while you have a chance, go away and come back when you are sober, and leave behind these cutthroats and small ragtag that dangle at your tail. Good day." He turned and left the balcony. "Come back, Saruman," said Gandalf in a commanding voice. To the amazement of the others, Saruman turned again, as if dragged against his will. He came slowly back to the iron rail, leaning on it, breathing hard. His face was lined and shrunken. His hand clutched his heavy black staff like a claw. "I did not give you leave to go," said Gandalf sternly. "I have not finished. You have become a fool, Saruman, and yet pitiable. You might still have turned away from folly and evil, and have been of service. But you choose to stay and gnaw at the ends of your old plots. Stay then, but I warn you, you will not easily come out again. Not unless the dark hands of the East stretch out to take you." "Saruman!" he cried, and his voice grew in power and authority. "Behold, I am not Gandalf the Grey, whom you betrayed. I am Gandalf the White, who has returned from death. You have no color now, and I cast you from the Order and from the Council." He raised his hand and spoke slowly in a cold, clear voice. "Saruman, your staff is broken." There was a crack, and the staff split asunder in Saruman's hand, and the head of it fell down at Gandalf's feet. "Go," said Gandalf. With a cry, Saruman fell back and crawled away. At that moment a heavy, shining thing came hurtling down from above. It glanced off the iron rail, even as Saruman left it, and passing close to Gandalf's head, it smote the stair on which he stood. The rail rang and snapped. The stair cracked and splintered in glittering sparks. But the ball was unharmed. It rolled on down the steps, a globe of crystal, dark but glowing with a heart of fire. As it bounded away towards a pool, Pippin ran after it and picked it up. Okay, let's talk about this now.
Let's talk about this. And actually, we're going to talk about that.
You are Saruman the Transparent. Yes. Saruman the Mauve. No, you have no color now.
Do I think that the blue wizards could break each other's staff like this? No. See, here's the thing. This is not normal. Now, I want to mention, let's backtrack a little bit. This is the first time in the Legendarium that we hear of there being 5 wizards. When we first read The Hobbit, we're introduced to Gandalf very quickly. And then, about halfway through the book, maybe a little more than half, Radagast is mentioned. And at the very end of the book, the White Wizard is mentioned. They don't say Saruman, they just say White Wizard. So now we know there's 3 wizards. Now we're in The Lord of the Rings, we know Gandalf, we get a scene with Radagast, Saruman's a major character. But now this is the first time that 5 is mentioned, the number 5. Now, this is really, really interesting because we got to talk about this at length. Now, first off, I want to say that this scene, the first time I read this scene, this is what put me on the path that led me to be right here talking to you. The resurrection is another completely unusual thing, Dylan, because that was an act of God. That wasn't something that the wizards just do. Saruman doesn't get resurrected, for example. So this is where I was like, wait a minute, there's 5? So there's 2 we don't know about. And I finished the book, and I still don't know about the 2. I read the appendix, and that's where we learn that there are 2 other wizards, and they're called the Blue Wizards. And we learn about how the wizards came from over the sea and met Círdan and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, but what are their names and what are they all about, right? Oh, hey there, Deb. How's it going? So that's when I first, read Unfinished Tales. This is the same copy, actually. And I read, I went straight to the chapter called the Istari, because that word's in the appendix. It says that the wizards are something called Istari, which is really just the Elvish way of saying wizard. It means wise, right? So I'm like fascinated by this. And this is where I started to study, not just read, but study the Legendarium, So anyway, we really don't know anything at all about them at this point. If you read Unfinished Tales in the Silmarillion and the Nature of Middle-earth, you know their names. If you read his letters, you know their names. You know sort of their histories, but they're not in this story. They're not important to the Lord of the Rings, and that's why we really don't hear about them all that often. But him mentioning the rods of the 5 wizards, that was like very fascinating to 11-year-old John, and that's where I started cross-referencing things and all this stuff, and started to just blossom into a Tolkien scholar. Now, we don't know what they do. We don't know much about what they do. Now, the breaking of the staff is really interesting. Now, previously, the last time that Saruman and Gandalf came together, Saruman was the one who held all the cards. He had all the authority, and he simply told Gandalf, I'm taking you captive. And Gandalf was like, for how long? And Saruman's like, until you figure out that what you're doing ain't working. So notice there is no battle between the wizards as depicted in the film. He's just told, you're my captive now. The doors had closed behind him. He's led up to the roof, and he's left there. Does Saruman take his staff? No. Does he take his sword? No. He really thinks that I'm going to put this guy in timeout for a couple of weeks maybe, and then I'll check on him, and I'm sure he's going to be a more amenable to my point of view. And then he goes up to the roof and he finds that Gandalf's gone. And that's really got to mess with him. Because he knows Gandalf can't fly. He's not splattered on the rocks. What happened? So he knows something happened, right? He knows something crazy happened. Breaking a wizard's staff is an incredible, incredible feat. And doing it with just words is literally what Gandalf is doing here is he is altering reality with his voice. Because he doesn't say some magic mumbo jumbo in Elvish and that's interesting, because there's a later part in that game where you're imprisoned and you don't have your items and everything, and you have to sort of do a stealth part, unless you have the one character that doesn't use weapons. But, in the beginning, they sort of they just sort of glossed over it because they were in a hurry. But anyway, back to the Lord of the Rings. I could talk about Chrono Trigger for days, but back to the Lord of the Rings. He doesn't use a spell. He doesn't say, something in Elvish. He just says, your staff is broken. And then it breaks. The universe itself is conforming to the words that Gandalf says. This is a little bit of the true power of the angels coming out. It's saying, I'm saying that this is a little bit of the Ainu Lindala, the music of the Holy Ones. And that is really a form of authority. He's saying something happened, and then it happens. Your staff is broken. Was it broken when he said that? No. But then it became broken. He didn't shoot a fireball. He didn't make it come to him and then snap it over its knee. He just simply said, your staff is broken. That is authority. And that is authority from the very, very highest power, Iluvatar. So we have to remember that Gandalf died. And he died in an unusual way. He died in an incarnate form. And then he was taken from the world. He went beyond time. And he went to a place that no one in the world knows. And then he came back. Now, does this happen to Saruman when he dies? Does he leave the world? No. He looks to the west and he's blown away, denied by a cold wind, and then he's just forced to wander Middle-earth forever. When he's narrating the story from the moment, he destroyed the fourth wall there. Sorry, Frodo, I was delayed. What I'm saying here is that God gave Gandalf the authority to fire Saruman. Because remember, when he came back, what was it that Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli said to him? They said, we thought you were Saruman. And he says, but I am. Or rather, I am Saruman as he was supposed to be. He is the White Wizard. And he has been told, you can fire the other guy. So he has, just with words and a gesture, not only just done something like breaking a stick. You know what I mean? He broke one already. He broke his own. When he broke the bridge, he channeled so much magic through his staff when he broke the bridge of Khazad-dûm that his staff broke. And here he's just saying, your staff's broken, gone, done. He has basically deprived Saruman of all the power that was given to him by God. And that the only thing he's left with is just the innate power of his own voice, which is charisma. And we've already seen his charisma fail. So, you know, he can't use that anymore on anybody that's important. Now, he will use it later, and we're going to talk about that at the very end of the book, because that is the very end of the book. But what I'm getting at here is basically Gandalf is taking him off the board as a major player. He's saying, you know what? You're done. You're not a wizard anymore. I'm taking you out of the running. I'm breaking your staff. And you'd think that he'd learn from that, but at this point, the only thing that he can do is become a petty thug. He is no longer the capital E evil. He's the lowercase e evil. At this point, he has more in common with Gollum than he does with Sauron. So, this is a magnificent feat. Now, could Gandalf do this to the other wizards? No, I don't think so. I think it's because Saruman has gone so astray that Iluvatar told Gandalf, you know what, give him another shot. Give him a shot at redemption. And if he doesn't go for it, then take his powers. He can't do that to anybody else. He can't do it to Sauron, for example. He can't just march into Mordor and say, Sauron, your ring is broken. You know, that would be amazing, but he can't do that because that would be too much. Iluvatar doesn't like to step into the story that much. He did it once during the Akalabeth. And when we get to that, you know, you guys will see that was the worst possible thing that could have happened at the time, because that's what happens when you put the Valar into a corner. And what did Gandalf say about Saruman? He said, you got to be careful about this guy because he's in a corner. And when somebody's in a corner, they're really dangerous, and never put baby in a corner. But no, but seriously, so you put the Valar in a corner, and then and then they're going to say, Dad, and then it's all over. The Akalabeth happens. So we had a lot to talk about there, but let's continue onwards here. Oh, actually, we have one more thing to talk about. So the Palantir. So we get this ball that comes out. Is he still an immortal Maya after this? Yes. And we know that because when his body is killed, his spirit comes out of it and looks to the west. He still, at that point, thought that he could return to the west. He's still very much bound to the world. The only time there's two times, actually. The only time that one of the Ainur, the angels who were bound to the world, have successfully left the world, it has happened twice. Once was Gandalf, and the other was Morgoth. Gandalf came back, Morgoth didn't. The elves believe that he may in the future, right? But, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that nothing could take away his immortal nature. Iluvatar could take away his immortal nature. He just won't. Because he has to sit there as a spirit that can't do anything or affect anything. And this is the same thing that happens to Sauron until the end of the world. So, yeah. He didn't do that to Melkor. We don't know what he did to Melkor. We know what the elves believe, but we don't know what actually happened to Melkor when he was thrust out of the world. And when we do the Silmarillion, and I'm going to have to whip out some of the other books to back this up, there's a lot more to what that means. And whoa, hold on a second, something just happened on the Twitch side. We got a hype train, I think. Yes, we got a hype train. Alice just gifted 5 gift subs on Twitch. Who got the subs? We got Moogle, we got Clasher, we got, hold on, I gotta make this bigger. We got Moogle, we got Clasher, somebody named Greedy Carrot, Adsy, and Sega all got subscriptions. Thank you, Alice, for 5 gift subs. That means that I I'm going to give you 5 Steam games. But could we do that tomorrow? I'll spin the wheel and give you your prize tomorrow. But when I dibs on what as a band name? Wait, which one? But anyway, by the way, there was actually a band that wanted to call themselves Silmarillion. They were a bunch of nerds, and they wanted to call themselves Silmarillion. And then they started thinking, maybe that won't work. Maybe we'll get in trouble. And they shortened it to Marillion. And they had some really big hits in the 80s. They're still around. Really great band. You really want the first 4 albums, though. Those are the ones that are important. But yeah, Marillion was supposed to be Silmarillion. They just took off the Sil part. Thank you very much, Alice, for the gift subs. Remind me tomorrow to give you 5 Steam games. And by the way, that promotion, it's not on the screen, but for anyone who does a gift sub or buys a tier 2 or 3 sub on Twitch, joins as a channel member during a stream on YouTube, or does a 500 bits or a super chat, then I'll give you a Steam game as well. But anyway, I have a bunch of games to give away, and then some of them are really good. But anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, let's talk about the Palantir. So Wormtongue throws the Palantir for whatever reason. And that's what I want to talk about, because this is something where I'm not going to tell you guys what the situation is. I'm going to solicit your opinions. I want to know what you think. I'm going to read one section of this again. I already read it. I'm going to read it again, where the Palantir comes careening out of the window. And I want you to pay attention to the... Sarah, thank you for the 100 bits. That contributes to the hype train because it's 100 bits. If you get to 500, you get a Steam game. Thank you very much for the 100 bits. We're at level 2 hype train on Twitch, so anybody that contributes to the hype train, you get a free emote when it ends. The emote is something that you get to keep forever, and it's really cool. I have quite the collection of them now. All right, I'm going to read this section to you again of the ball, the crystal ball, the Palantir coming careening out of there, and I want you guys to pay attention to the trajectory. Okay, this is the part we want to talk about. Not just that the Palantir is thrown, but the trajectory in which it comes out. At that moment, a heavy, shining thing came hurtling down from above. It glanced off the iron rail even as Saruman left it, and passing close to Gandalf's head, it smote the stair on which he stood. So, the assumption that most people make, and I'm not saying that this is a... that's fine. I mean, here, if I give you the Steam code, you know what you can do with it. You don't have a PC. You could give it to somebody else. They're fungible. They could be transferred. So I give you the code. If you could keep that, you could make that a gift to somebody else. But anyway, and plus the super chats just help support me as well. But that's just, the promotion is just my way of trying to give back here. But anyway, the assumption, and it's not an incorrect or a correct assumption, because we really don't know the answer to this question. We only have opinions, and this is why I'm not going to tell you what happened here. I'm going to solicit your opinions, because this is one of the things in Tolkien that is 100% open to interpretation. The ball comes out, and it nearly hits Gandalf. It goes right by Gandalf's head. So the assumption is made that Grima was trying to hit Gandalf with the Palantir. Our hype train is done. Let me see what emote we got. Oh, it's a screaming frog. That's cool. I like it. It's a screaming frog emote. Okay. However, it also struck the railing, and I'm going to read the exact phrase again, even as Saruman left it. So, an alternate assumption that we could make is that he was actually aiming at Saruman. Now, at this point in the story, we have every reason to believe that... Dylan, thank you for the super chat of 99 cents. Thank you very much. We have every reason to believe that he was aiming at Gandalf. So, it has to be like $5, like 99 cents wouldn't do it. Like I said, it's 500 bits or a sub on Twitch. So on YouTube, I have to kind of make it like the same thing. But if you get there within one stream, I would consider that. Like if you did like $4.01, and I would absolutely do that if you wanted me to gift it to someone else. I could do that. We have every reason to believe that he's aiming at Gandalf. But when we come back to this in our minds after reading the whole book, and we know that Grima's the one that actually kills Saruman in the end, maybe he was aiming actually at Saruman. Or maybe he wasn't aiming at all. Maybe he was just throwing it. No. Spielko's view is that Grima couldn't decide who he hates more, Saruman or Gandalf, and therefore missed both. Well, I think the only reason that he... Here's the thing. The only reason that it didn't hit Saruman is because Saruman moved. And the only reason that Saruman moved was because Gandalf told him to move. At that point, he was completely under the control of the White. So, the intention here... Why do I think Saruman went east? Can you explain what you mean by that? The intention here is that... Well, or we should ask, what is the intention? Was he aiming? Was he just throwing it in a rage? Or was he trying to hit one of them? If he was trying to hit Saruman, his aim is really good. If he was trying to hit Gandalf, his aim is really bad. Because it bounced off the railing first. You know what I mean? My opinion is that he was aiming for Saruman. But, of course, the fact that it went by Gandalf's head gives him plausible deniability. Oh, that's in Unfinished Tales. Grima hesitated due to inner conflict. That's possible. It's also possible that the reason that it didn't hit anybody is one of those moments of divine intervention. But we were told that Saruman, when he first came to Middle-earth, he went to the same places that the Blue Wizards went, to the east and to the south, and then he came back to the northeast. And he never said anything about what he saw out there. We don't know if he met the Blue Wizards while he was out there. We just know that he basically followed them. Because Tolkien's sort of final word was that the wizards didn't all arrive at the same time. That the blue ones came first. And they came during the Second Age. Now, here's the really interesting thing. Let's go back to the five wizard thing, actually. In some versions of the arrival of the wizards, he did state that there were five. And he named the five, However, there was one version of it in Unfinished Tales where he said that there were many wizards, but there were five chiefs, which would mean that there were five wizards that were in charge and that the other wizards were lesser. And that you could tell which ones were the chiefs because they were the ones that had the staves. So the ones holding the staves were the chiefs. And I think he dropped that later on because it's confusing and people start to go, well, what about those other wizards? Do they have colors? What are they doing? You know what I mean? I think it was just an idea that he had because what he wrote here in The Lord of the Rings, he was married to the number 5 at this point. So I think that at some point he might have been trying to write his way out of that box and say, well, there were actually more than 5, but there were only 5 staves. So it's just an interesting thing to talk about, and when we get into Unfinished Tales and The Treason of Isengard, that book as well, we'll talk more about it. But let's continue here with the Two Towers here. Okay.
"The murderous rogue!" cried Éomer, but Gandalf was unmoved. "No, that was not thrown by Saruman," he said, "nor even at his bidding, I think. It came from a window far above, a parting shot from Master Wormtongue, I fancy, but ill-aimed." The aim was poor, maybe, because he could not make up his mind which he hated more, you or Saruman," said Aragorn. "That may be so," said Gandalf. "Small comfort will those two have in their companionship. They will gnaw one another with words. But the punishment is just. If Wormtongue ever comes out of Orthanc alive, it will be more than he deserves." "Here, my lad, I'll take that. I did not ask you to handle it," he cried, turning sharply and seeing Pippin coming up the steps slowly, as if he were bearing a great weight. He went down to meet him and hastily took the dark globe from the hobbit, wrapping it in the folds of his cloak. "I will take care of this," he said. "It is not a thing that Saruman would have chosen to cast away." "But he may have other things to cast," said Gimli. "If that is the end of the debate, let us get out of Stones Through at least." "It is the end," said Gandalf. "Let us go."
Wait, hold on. I like to think of the Istari all let their powers combine. They summon Captain Arda, and then does Captain Arda have a round magic shield? I think the joke was less Captain America and more Captain Planet there. Oh, a mithril shield. Now here's the question: is mithril better than the vibranium adamantium alloy? He has red spandex and a green. Yeah, I knew you were making a Captain Planet joke. I used to watch that show when I was a kid. They turned their backs on the doors of Orthanc and went down. The riders hailed the king with joy and saluted Gandalf. The spell of Saruman was broken. They had seen him come at call and crawled away, dismissed. "Well, that is done," said Gandalf. "Now I must find Treebeard and tell him how things have gone." "He will have guessed, surely," said Merry. "Were they likely to end any other way?" "Not likely," answered Gandalf, "though they came to the balance of a hair. But I had reasons for trying, some merciful and some less so. First, Saruman was shown that the power of his voice was waning. He cannot be both tyrant and counsellor. When the plot is ripe, it remains no longer secret. Yet he fell into the trap, and tried to deal with his victims piecemeal while others listened. Then I gave him a last choice, and a fair one, to renounce both Mordor and his private schemes, and make amends by helping us in our need. He knows our need, none better. Great service he could have rendered, but he has chosen to withhold it and keep the power of Orthanc. He will not serve, only command. He lives now in terror of the shadow of Mordor, and yet still dreams of riding the storm. Unhappy fool! He will be devoured if the power of the East stretches out its arms to Isengard. We cannot destroy Orthanc from without, but Sauron, who knows what he can do?" "And what if Sauron does not conquer? What will you do to him?" asked Pippin. "I? Nothing," said Gandalf. "I will do nothing to him. I do not wish for mastery. What will become of him I cannot say. I grieve that so much that was good now festers in the tower. Still, for us things have not gone badly. Strange are the turns of fortune. Often does hatred hurt itself. I fancy that, even if we had entered in, we would have found few treasures in Orthanc more precious than the thing which Wormtongue threw down at us." A shrill shriek, suddenly cut off, came from an open window high above. "It seems that Saruman thinks so too," said Gandalf.
let us leave, then.
The Planeteer Nazgul? Oh dear. The power of heart, corrupted by Sauron and the rings. They returned now to the ruins of the gate. Hardly had they passed out under the arch when, from among the shadows of the piled stones where they had stood, Treebeard and a dozen other Ents came striding up. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas gazed at them in wonder. "Here are 3 of my companions, Treebeard," said Gandalf. "I have spoken of them, but you have not yet seen them." He named them one by one. The old Ent looked at them long and searchingly, and spoke to them in turn. Last he turned to Legolas.
"So you have come all the way from Mirkwood, my good elf. A very great forest it used to be."
"And still is," said Legolas, "but not so great that we who dwell there ever tire of seeing new trees. I should dearly love to journey in Fangorn's wood. I scarcely passed beyond the eaves of it, and I did not wish to turn back." Treebeard's eyes gleamed with pleasure.
"I hope you have your wish ere the hills be much older," he said.
"I will come, if I have the fortune," said Legolas. "I have made a bargain with my friend that, if all goes well, we will visit Fangorn together, by your leave."
"Any elf that comes with you will be welcome," said Treebeard.
"The friend I speak of is not an elf," said Legolas. "I mean Gimli, Gloin's son here." Gimli bowed low, and the axe slipped from his belt and clattered on the ground.
No," said Treebeard, looking dark-eyed at him. "A dwarf and an axe-bearer. I have good will to elves, but you ask much. This is a strange friendship."
"Strange it may seem," said Legolas, "but while Gimli lives I shall not come to Fangorn alone. His axe is not for trees, but for Orkney, so Fangorn, master of Fangorn's wood. 42 he hewed in battle."
"Come now," said Treebeard. "That is a better story. Well, things will go as they will, and there is no need to hurry to meet them. But now we must part for a while. Day is drawing to an end, yet Gandalf says you must go ere nightfall. And the Lord of the Mark is eager for his own house."
"Yes, we must go and go now," said Gandalf. "I fear that I must take your gatekeepers from you, but you will manage well enough without them."
"Maybe I shall," said Treebeard, "but I shall miss them. We have become friends in so short a while that I think I must be getting hasty, growing backwards towards youth, perhaps. But they're the first new thing under sun or moon that I have seen for many a long, long day. I shall not forget them. I have put their names into the long list. Ents will remember it. Ents the earth-born, old as mountains, the wide walkers, water-drinking, and hungry as hunters, the hobbit children, the laughing folk, the little people. They shall remain friends as long as leaves are renewed. Fare you well. But if you hear news up in your pleasant land, in the Shire, send me word. You know what I mean. Word or sight of the Entwives. Come yourselves if you can."
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Treebeard is one of the most fun voices to do. "We will," said Merry and Pippin together, and they turned away hastily. Treebeard looked at them and was silent for a while, shaking his head thoughtfully. Then he turned to Gandalf.
"So Saruman would not leave," he said. "I did not think he would. His heart is rotten as a black one's. Still, If I were overcome and all my trees destroyed, I would not come while I had one dark hole left to hide in.
No, said Gandalf.
But you have not plotted to cover all the world with your trees and choke all other living things. But there it is. Saruman remains to nurse his hatred and weave again such webs as he can. He has the key to Orthanc, but he must not be allowed to escape.
Indeed, no.
Ence will see to that, said Treebeard. Saruman shall not set foot beyond the rock without my leave. Ence will watch over him.
Good, said Gandalf.
That is what I hoped. Now I can go and turn to other matters, with one care the less, but you must be wary. The waters have drawn down. It will not be enough to put sentinels around the tower, I fear. I do not doubt that there are deep ways delved under Orthanc, and that Saruman hopes to go and come unmarked before long. If you will undertake the labour, I beg you to pour in the waters again, and do so until Isengard remains a standing pool, or you discover the outlets. When all the underground places are drowned and the outlets blocked, then Saruman must stay upstairs and look out of his windows. Leave it to the Ents, said Treebeard. We will search the valley from head to foot, and peer under every pebble. Trees are coming back to live here. Old trees, wild trees. The Watchwood we will call it. Not a squirrel will go here, but I shall know of it. Leave it to the Ents. Until 7 times the years in which he tormented us have passed, we shall not tire of watching him.
Did you know that was, in the movie, that was the same actor that played Gimli? It was John Rhys Davies that played Treebeard. There's a few scenes where you can kind of hear it as Gimli. He was breathing a lot, doing it like this, but I do it deeper. It's down here. That's the end of that chapter. Now, it's interesting because he says, yeah, we're not going to let this guy go. We're going to watch over him until all the time that has passed where he's tortured us times 7. And then it's just like a couple of months and Treebeard lets him go, So, and he has he has an excuse and everything, and a reason for it, in the Return of the King. He said, bet. Yeah. He does let him go after just a couple of months. And really it was just, like that Saruman just sort of sweet-talked him after a while, And it was important that he did get out for the story to end the way that it did. But that being said, what happens to Isengard now? Because the book doesn't get into it much, but he talks about making it a pool and everything, and having this Watchwood. But the Watchwood, like I said, it doesn't last long. They definitely just let Saruman go after a little while. But what happens when Aragorn becomes king is that he actually, he goes into Isengard and he explores the tower. He finds the Elendil mirror, which is pretty amazing. But he winds up putting the Ents in charge of Isengard. And the area becomes known as the Treegarth of Isengard. But yeah. Oh, hey there, Amir. How's it going? So, I would like to continue, because it's only 9:30. Not even 9:30. And the next chapter is short. It's the Palantir. And there's a lot to talk about in that chapter. And chapter 11, the Palantir, is also the final chapter of Book 3. Which would mean that next stream we would start Book 4, which is the second half of the Two Towers. And that's where we leave the characters that we've been following in the Two Towers. Because the Two Towers started out very much following, Aragorn first. And then it goes to Merry. And then there's a while where it goes to Aragorn again, and then we go with Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas and Merry and Pippin and Theoden and all this, right? But book 4, we're going to shift over to Frodo and Sam, and we're going to be reintroduced to Gollum, which means I get to do the voice brushes. But when I was doing The Hobbit, I told myself I'm not going to do Andy Serkis. I let Gollum talk like this. And that was fun, but it was really rough on my voice. So I think for this one, it's going to be Andy Serkis brushes. Yes. Gollum. Where are you that it's 340? Not like 320, but 340. Oh, wow. It's 9:22 right here. Yeah, I'll have to. I actually probably will literally make some Gollum juice for some of these chapters next time. For those of you who are unaware, Gollum juice is green tea with honey and lemon. Meatwad doing an impression of Andy Serkis. Okay, all right, y'all. I'm gonna do Andy Serkis. You ready for me? Oh, I'm from New Zealand. Good day. How was that? Pretty good, huh? Put another shrimp on the Bible. Damn! All right, let's do this chapter. Oh, you're in Malaysia. So it must be one of those time zones that's like, it's not lined up exactly. Well, because it's the southern hemisphere, I guess. Where it's not like you're not off by hours, because there's also like a little bit of, it's a little bit where it's off by minutes, All right, here we go. Chapter 11, The Palantir. The sun was sinking behind the long western arm of the mountains when Gandalf and his companions, and the king with his riders, set out again from Isengard. Gandalf took Merry behind him, and Aragorn took Pippin. 2 of the king's men went on ahead, riding swiftly, and passed soon out of sight down into the valley. The others followed at an easy pace. Ents in a solemn row stood like statues at the gate, with their long arms uplifted, but they made no sound. Merry and Pippin looked back, when they had passed some way down the winding road. Sunlight was still shining in the sky, but long shadows reached over Isengard, grey ruins falling into darkness. Treebeard stood alone there now, like the distant stump of an old tree. The hobbits thought of their first meeting upon the sunny ledge far away on the borders of Fangorn. They came to the pillar of the White Hand. The pillar was still standing, but the graven hand had been thrown down and broken into small pieces. Right in the middle of the road, the long forefinger lay, white in the dusk, its red nail darkening to black. "The Ents pay attention to every detail," said Gandalf. They rode on, and evening deepened in the valley. "Are we riding far tonight, Gandalf?" asked Merry after a while. "I don't know how you feel about..." Let's try that again. "I don't know how you feel with a small ragtag dangling behind you, but the ragtag is tired, and will be glad to stop dangling and lie down." "So you heard that," said Gandalf. "Don't let it rankle. Be thankful no longer words were aimed at you. He had his eyes on you. If it is any comfort to your pride, I should say that at the moment you and Pippin are more in his thoughts than all the rest of us. Who you are, how you came there, and why, what you know, whether you were captured, and if so, how you escaped when all the orcs perished. It is with those little riddles that the great mind of Saruman is troubled. A sneer from him, Meriadoc, is a compliment if you feel honoured by his concern." "Thank you," said Merry. "But it is a great honour to dangle at your tail, Gandalf. For one thing, in that position, one has a chance of putting a question a second time. Are we riding far tonight?" Gandalf laughed. "Most unquenchable hobbit. All wizards should have a hobbit or two in their care, to teach them the meaning of the word and to correct them. I beg your pardon, but I have given thought even to these simple matters. We will ride for a few hours, gently, until we come to the end of the valley. Tomorrow we must ride faster."
When we came, we meant to go straight from Isengard back to the king's house at Edris over the plains, a ride of some days, but we have taken thought and changed the plan. Messengers have gone ahead to Helm's Deep to warn them that the king is returning tomorrow. He will ride from there with many men to Dunharrow by paths among the hills. From now on, no more than 2 or 3 together are to go openly over the land by day or night, when it can be avoided.
Nothing will double helping in your way, said Merry. I am afraid I was not looking beyond tonight's bed. Where and what are Helm's Deep and all the rest of it? I don't know anything about this country.
Then you'd best learn something if you wish to understand what is happening. But not just now, and not from me. I have too many pressing things to think about.
All right, I'll tackle Strider by the campfire. He's less testy. But why all this secrecy? I thought we'd won the battle.
Yes, we have won, but only the first victory, and that in itself increases our danger. There was some link between Isengard and Mordor which I have not yet fathomed. How they exchanged news I am not sure, but they did so. The Eye of Barad-dûr will be looking impatiently towards the Wizard's Vale, I think, and towards Rohan. The less it sees, the better.
The road passed slowly, winding down the valley. Now further, and now nearer Isen flowed in its stony bed. Night came down from the mountains. All the mists were gone. A chill wind blew. The moon, now waxing round, filled the eastern sky with a pale, cold sheen. The shoulders of the mountains to their right sloped down to bare hills. The wide plains opened grey before them. At last they halted. Then they turned aside, leaving the highway and taking to the sweet upland turf again. Going westward a mile or so, they came to a dale. It opened southward, leading back into the slope of Round Dal Barron, the last hill of the northern ranges, green-footed, crowned with heather. The sides of the glen were shaggy with last year's bracken, among which the tight-curled fronds of spring were just thrusting through the sweet-scented earth. Thorn bushes grew thick upon the low banks, and under them they made their camp 2 hours or so before the middle of the night. They lit a fire in a hollow, down among the roots of a spreading hawthorn, tall as a tree, writhen with age, but hale in every limb. Buds were swelling at each twig's tip. Guards were set 2 at a watch. The rest, after they had supped, wrapped themselves in a cloak and blanket and slept. The hobbits lay in a corner by themselves upon a pile of old bracken. Merry was sleepy, but Pippin now seemed curiously restless. The bracken crackled and rustled, and he twisted and turned. "What's the matter?" asked Merry. "Are you lying on an ant-hill?" "No," said Pippin. "But I'm not comfortable. I wonder how long it has been since I slept in a bed." Merry yawned.
"Work it out on your fingers," he said.
"But you must know how long it is since we left Lorien." "Oh, that," said Pippin. "I mean a real bed in a bedroom." "Oh, Rivendell then," said Merry. "But I could sleep anywhere tonight." "You had the luck, Merry," said Pippin softly after a pause. "You were riding with Gandalf." "Well, what of it?" "Did you get any news, any information out of him?" "Yes, a good deal, more than usual. But you heard it all, or most of it. You were close by, and we were talking no secrets. But you can go with him tomorrow if you think you can get more out of him. And if he'll have you." "Can I? Good!" "But he's close, isn't he? Not changed at all." "Oh, yes, he is," said Merry, waking up a little, and beginning to wonder what was bothering his companion. "He has grown, or something. He can be both kinder and more alarming, merrier and more solemn than before, I think. He has changed. But we have not had a chance to see how much yet. But think of the last part of that business with Saruman. Remember, Saruman was once Gandalf's superior, head of the council, whatever that may be exactly. He was Saruman the White. Gandalf is the White now. Saruman came when he was told and his rod was taken, and then he was just told to go and he went." "Well, if Gandalf has changed at all, then he's closer than ever, that's all," Pippin argued. "That glass ball now, he seemed mighty pleased with it. He knows or guesses something about it." "But does he tell us what?" "No, not a word. Yet I picked it up and I saved it from rolling into a pool. Here, I'll take that, my lad, that's all. I wonder what it is. It felt so very heavy." Pippin's voice fell very low, as if he was talking to himself. "Hullo," said Merry. "So that's what's bothering you. Now, Pippin, my lad, don't forget Gildor's saying, the one Sam used to quote, 'Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger.' But our whole life for months has been one long meddling in the affairs of wizards," said Pippin. I should like a bit of information as well as danger. I should like a look at that ball. Go to sleep, said Merry. You'll get information enough sooner or later, my dear Pippin. No took ever beat a brandy buck for inquisitiveness. But is this the time, I ask you? The eye is a real thing. There really is an eye of Sauron. It's not sitting on top of the tower. But Sam does see it later in The Return of the King, towards the end. It's peering out of the windows, flickering like a flame. And it's not always there, only when Sauron is looking outwards. The eye is less of a manifestation of Sauron and more of a spell that he casts so that he could look very far. Sort of similar to what one does with a Palantir. But yeah. You wonder if a Maya could direct a Palantir to the timeless halls. Now, that's an interesting question, and I would say no. And the reason that I would say no is because there's an entire chapter of Unfinished Tales called the Palantiri, and it explains how they work. And essentially, for them to light up and to actually do anything, they have to be, the crystal ball has to be sitting exactly on its axis. And it was explained that when Pippin used it, he just got lucky when he plunked it down, right? So the reason that it couldn't see the timeless halls is because that direction is up. So you can't direct it upwards and have it still sitting exactly on its axis. That's why people usually have it sitting in a basin so that it's always on its axis and you can spin it to look in different directions. Now, it was described that Elendil once used one of the Palantiri to look to Numenor and that he saw that it was gone. So we get an idea there of the effective range of the Palantiri, that it could see where Numenor was, and that's pretty far. However, the Undying Lands is now not only much further away, and that's where Frodo saw it at Amon Hen. He also saw it in the what do you call it? Mirror of Galadriel. So the Undying Lands are up as well, because you have to think of the world. It's a globe, so you have to sort of think of like where the Undying Lands as being separate from the world now. It's to the west, but not to the west of Middle Earth, to the west of the world. And there's a lot of space between here and there. There's only like one little thin ribbon that you can sail if you know the path and if you're welcome to, which is called the Straight Road. But I don't think that you could see to the Undying Lands. However, it is possible that one specific Palantir could, and that's the one that Círdan has in a tower by the Shire. And we talked about this when we were reading Book 1, that when Frodo first started having these prophetic dreams, he's in a position on the map that is very close to the Master Palantir, or not the Master Palantir, but the one that supposedly can communicate with the Master Palantir, which is in the Undying Lands, and where Tom Bombadil is. Now, seeing Tol Eressëa is one thing, but Mandos is interesting because if we read about Mandos, it's actually underground. It's under Amon. So once again, you would have to be able to tilt it in a way that would see the Undying Lands and have the one that's powerful enough, but also you would have to see through the ground. And we don't have any sort of indication that the Palantir could see through the ground. So I would say that you could not see Mandos. And if you could, I think Namo would be pretty upset about that. He would probably have some sort of protection against people peeking in on him in his domain, I would think. Like I said, even and that's in Amon, or it's under Amon. It was said that you could see Erisea, which is a little bit closer to Middle Earth than Amon is, but not further than that. They couldn't see Valinor, for example. All right, let's continue onwards here. All right, what's the harm in my telling you what I should like? A look at that stone. I know I can't have it with old Gandalf sitting on it like a hen on an egg, but it doesn't help much to get no more from him than a you can't have it, go to sleep. Well, what else could I say, said Merry. I'm sorry, Pippin, but you really must wait till the morning. I'll be curious as you like after breakfast, and I'll help in any way I can at wizard wheedling, but I can't keep awake any longer. If I yawn any more, I shall split at the ears. Good night. Well, you have to remember that the Mirror of Galadriel shows you things that might not be true. That's an important distinction. The Palantir just shows you either somebody else on the other end or just looking in a specific direction, right? They're able to peek through walls. Why not through the ground? Because walls are something that we create. The ground is something that God created. And so I think that, like Feanor was able to make something that could peek through walls, but could he make something that could see into Mandos? Could any elf make something that could see into Mandos? I don't know about that. We have to remember these are things that the elves made, and that it was likely Feanor. At least that's Gandalf's opinion. Gandalf thinks it was Feanor. Pippin said no more. He lay still now, but sleep remained far away, and it was not encouraged by the sound of Merry breathing softly, asleep in a few minutes after saying good night. The thought of the dark globe seemed to grow stronger as all grew quiet. Pippin felt again its weight in his hands, and saw again the mysterious red depths into which he had looked for a moment. He tossed and turned and tried to think of something else. At last he could stand it no longer. He got up and looked round. It was chilly, and he wrapped his cloak about him. The moon was shining cold and white down into the dell, and the shadows of the bushes were black. All about lay sleeping shapes. The two guards were not in view. They were up on the hill, perhaps, or hidden in the bracken. Driven by some impulse that he did not understand, Pippin walked softly to where Gandalf lay. He looked down at him. The wizard seemed asleep, but with his lids not fully closed, there was a glitter of eyes under his long lashes. Pippin stepped back hastily, but Gandalf made no sign, and drawn forward once more, half against his will, the hobbit crept up again from behind the wizard's head. He was rolled in a blanket with his cloak spread over the top, and close beside him, between his right side and his bent arm, there was a hammock, something round wrapped in a dark cloth. His hand seemed only to have just slipped off it to the ground. Let's talk about this. Her mirror can peer through time and into the realm of surmise. I love that you're using one of my favorite phrases, the realm of surmise. I'm happy that people have picked up on that. So, what is really happening here? Is this really Took foolishness, right? Is it divine intervention? Is it something in between? Pippin doesn't even understand why he's so drawn to the Palantir. None of the other characters are really drawn to it. Yes, he did touch it, of course, but we aren't told of the Palantiri as being incredibly seductive. They're not like the One Ring, for example. He's doing this half against his own will, being drawn to it. And he happens to get there right when Gandalf's hand slips off of it. It's an amazing coincidence, and this to me reads like a bit of the divine, whether it's Iluvatar or whether it's the Valar. There is a larger force at play. I would personally think Iluvatar that is subtly guiding Pippin specifically to do this. And you would wonder, well, why not Merry, right? Well, because Merry hasn't touched the thing, probably. So he has no connection to it. Pippin has to look into the Palantir. It's one of the most important things that happens in the entirety of the story. As a matter of fact, the only thing that happened so far that is more important than Pippin looking into the Palantir is Bilbo finding the ring. Or maybe Gollum getting the ring. But really, Bilbo finding the ring. That's like the most important thing that happened. And this is like the second most important thing that happened. There is no way they would have won the war. There is no way Frodo would have gotten to Mount Doom if Pippin doesn't look into this thing. It's the linchpin that is happening at the end of book 3 of 6, the middle of the story. Everything that comes before it is leading up to this moment where Pippin looks into the Palantir. And everything that happens afterwards is a consequence of that. It's the most important thing that happens in The Lord of the Rings. It's, like I said, the only other thing that is more important happened in The Hobbit. And of course there are things that are more important that happen in the Silmarillion, but we're talking about important to this particular story of The War of the Ring. The discovery of the ring is incredibly important, but it leads up to this point. Everything that happens leads up to this point, and it's the exact middle of the book. A linchpin. So let's continue here. Hardly breathing, Pippin crept nearer, foot by foot. At last he knelt down. Then he put his hands out stealthily and slowly lifted the lump up. It did not seem quite so heavy as he had expected. Only some bundle of oddments, perhaps, after all, he thought with a strange sense of relief. But he did not put the bundle down again. He stood for a moment clasping it. Then an idea came into his mind. He tiptoed away, found a large stone, and came back. Quickly now he drew off the cloth, wrapped the stone in it, and kneeling down, laid it back by the wizard's hand. Then at last he looked at the thing that he had uncovered. There it was, smooth globe of crystal, now dark and dead, lying bare before his knees. Pippin lifted it, covered it hurriedly in his own cloak, and half turned to go back to his bed. At that moment Gandalf moved in his sleep, and muttered some words. They seemed to be in a strange tongue. His hand groped out and clasped the wrapped stone, then he sighed and did not move again. "You idiotic fool," Pippin muttered to himself. "You're going to get yourself into frightful trouble. Put it back quick." But he found now that his knees quaked, and he did not dare to go near enough to the wizard to reach the bundle. "I'll never get it back now without waking him," he thought. "Not till I'm a bit calmer. So I may as well have a look first. Not just here, though." He stole away and sat down on a green hillock not far from his bed. The moon looked in over the edge of his dell. Pippin sat with his knees drawn up and the ball between them. He bent low over it, looking like a greedy child stooping over a bowl of food in a corner away from others. He drew his cloak aside and gazed at it. The air seemed still and tense about him. At first the globe was dark, black as jet, with the moonlight gleaming on its surface. Then there came a faint glow and stir in the heart of it, and it held his eyes, so that now he could not look away. Soon all the inside seemed on fire. The ball was spinning, or the lights within were revolving. Suddenly the lights went out. He gave a gasp and struggled, but he remained bent, clasping at the ball with his hands. Closer and closer he bent, and then became rigid. His lips moved soundlessly for a while. Then with a strangled cry he fell back and lay still. The cry was piercing. The guards leapt from their banks. All the camp was soon astir. "So this is the thief," said Gandalf. Hastily he cast his cloak over the globe where it lay. Oh my God, I would go to that concert. I would go to that concert. There's a lot of other bands that are named after Tolkien stuff. I mean, there's a Cirith Ungol, although they insist that it's pronounced Cirith Ungol. There's a Gorgoroth. Let's see, what else is there? There's so many. Let's see. There's an Iluvatar. There's that. There's a Luthien. There's a lot of bands, especially in the heavy metal sphere, that are named after Tolkien stuff. "But you, Pippin, this is a grievous turn to things." He knelt by Pippin's body. The hobbit was laying on his back, rigid, with unseeing eyes staring at the sky. "The devilry! What mischief has he done to himself and to all of us?" The wizard's face was drawn and haggard. He took Pippin's hand, and bent over his face, listening for his breath. Then he laid his hands on his brow. The hobbit shuddered. His eyes closed. He cried out and sat up, staring in bewilderment at all the faces round him, pale in the moonlight. "It is not for you, Saruman," he cried in a shrill and toneless voice, shrinking away from Gandalf. "I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that." Then he struggled to get up and escape, but Gandalf held him gently and firmly. "Peregrine Took," he said, "come back." The hobbit relaxed and fell back, clinging to the wizard's hand. "Gandalf," he cried. "Gandalf, forgive me."
"Forgive you," said the wizard. "Tell me first what you have done."
I took the bolt and looked at it," stammered Pippin. "And I saw things that frightened me. And I wanted to go away, but I couldn't. And then he came and questioned me. And he looked at me, and that is all I remember."
"That won't do," said Gandalf sternly. "What did you see, and what did you say?"
Pippin shut his eyes and shivered, but said nothing. They all stared at him in silence, except Merry, who turned away. But Gandalf's face was still hard.
"Speak," he said.
In a low, hesitating voice, Pippin began again, and slowly his words grew clearer and stronger. "I saw a dark sky and tall battlements," he said, "and tiny stars. It seemed very far away and long ago, yet hard and clear. Then the stars went in and out. They were cut off by things with wings, very big, I think, really, but in the glass they looked like bats wheeling around the tower. I thought there were 9 of them. One began to fly straight towards me, getting bigger and bigger. It had a horrible... No, I cannot say. I tried to get away, because I thought it would fly out, but when it had covered all the globe, it disappeared. Then he came. He did not speak so that I could hear words. He just looked, and I understood. 'So you've come back. Why have you neglected to report for so long?' I did not answer. He said, 'Who are you?' I still did not answer, but it hurt me horribly. And he pressed on, and I said, 'A hobbit.' Then suddenly he seemed to see me, and he laughed at me. It was cruel. It was like being stabbed with knives. I struggled. But he said, 'Wait a moment. We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that.' Then he gloated over me. I felt like I was falling to pieces. No, I can't say any more. I can't remember anything else."
"Look at me," said Gandalf.
Pippin looked up straight into his eyes. The wizard held his gaze for a moment in silence. Then his face grew gentler, and the shadow of a smile appeared. He laid his hand softly on Pippin's head. "All right," he said. "Say no more. You have taken no harm. There was no lie in your eyes, as I feared. But he did not speak long with you. A fool, but an honest fool you remain, Peregrine Took. Wiser ones might have done worse in such a pass. But mark this, you have been saved, and all your friends too, mainly by good fortune, as it is called. You cannot count on it a second time. If he had questioned you then and there, almost certainly you would have told him all that you know, to the ruin of us all. But he was too eager. He did not want information only. He only wanted you, quickly, so that he could deal with you in the Dark Tower, slowly. Don't shudder. If you will meddle in the affairs of wizards, you must be prepared to think of such things. But come, I forgive you. Be comforted. Things have not turned out as evilly as they might." He lifted Pippin gently and carried him back to his bed. Merry followed and sat beside him. "Lie there and rest if you can, Pippin," said Gandalf. "Trust me. If you feel an itch in your palms again, tell me of it. Such things can be cured. But again, my dear hobbit, don't put a lump of rock under my elbow again. Now I will leave you two together for a while. I need water." Okay, so we get some actual dialogue from Sauron, which is really cool. Of course, it's Pippin saying it. He's just repeating what Sauron told him. But if you think about this, the only characters in The Lord of the Rings that have seen Sauron were hobbits, Pippin and Gollum. You know, Gollum gave a description of what he looked like, you know. He knows of the Dark Tower. He's best buds with the Crimson King. Okay. But yeah, I mean, like I said, incredibly important. Sauron, he's thinking, that Saruman is useful after all. He got that hobbit that has the ring. And now, because of that, he's not going to think that there's any hobbits in Mordor trying to destroy the ring. They're not in Mordor yet. Well, actually, they're close to it at this point, because you have to remember that Book 4 takes place simultaneously with Book 3. So they're close to Mordor at this point. They're close to the stairs of Cirith But, yeah, like I said, the linchpin, the most important scene in the book. Everything flows in and flows out. Hey, Anons, I believe that I answered one of your questions in episode 130. So I remember saying, it says Anons and then some numbers. I guess that means it's anonymous, but how's it going? So, like I said, this is an incredibly important scene. I can't state how important it is. Everything from now on, is a consequence of Pippin and Sauron's little conversation. And everything before that led into it. On a literary... from a point of literature, it's an unimportant scene, right? It moves the plot forward. That's all it does. But from a point of mythology, it's, like I said, it's so important. It's so grand. All right, but we only have a little bit left here. Like I said, we have a few pages. We're gonna finish this chapter. With that, Gandalf returned to the others, who were still standing by the Orthanc stone in troubled thought. "Peril comes in the night when least expected," he said. "We have had a narrow escape." "How is the hobbit Pippin?" asked Aragorn. "I think all will be well now," answered Gandalf. "He was not held long, and hobbits have amazing powers of recovery. The memory, or the horror of it, will probably fade quickly. Too quickly, perhaps. Will you, Aragorn, take the Orthanc stone and guard it? It is a dangerous charge." "Dangerous indeed, but not to all," said Aragorn. "There is one who may claim it by right. For this assuredly is the Palantir of Orthanc, from the treasury of Elendil, set here by the kings of Gondor. Now my hour draws near. I will take it." Gandalf looked at Aragorn, and then, to the surprise of the others, he lifted the covered stone and bowed as he presented it. "Receive it, Lord," he said, "in earnest of other things that shall be given back. But if I may counsel you in the use of your own, do not use it yet. Be wary." Yeah, it's great to be back. It's great to be back. Didn't Aragorn see Sauron as well? Yes, you're right. He did see Sauron. So, yeah, Aragorn and two hobbits. The only characters to actually see him. Gollum was the only one that saw him up close, and personal. Which, he didn't even deserve that. That was a dark memory for him. "When have I been hasty or unwary who have waited and prepared for so many long years?" said Aragorn. "Never yet. Do not then stumble at the end of the road," answered Gandalf. But at the least keep this thing secret. You and all others that stand here, the hobbit Peregrine, above all, should not know where it is bestowed. The evil fit may come upon him again, for alas, he has handled it and looked in it, as should never have happened. He ought never to have touched it in Isengard, and there I should have been quicker. But my mind was bent on Saruman, and I did not guess the nature of the stone until it was too late. Only now have I become sure of it." "Yes, there can be no doubt," said Aragorn. "At last we know the link between Isengard and Mordor, and how it worked. Much is explained." "Strange powers have our enemies, and strange weaknesses," said Theoden. "But it has long been said, oft evil shall evil mar." "That is many times as seen," said Gandalf. "But at this time we have been strangely fortunate. Maybe I have been saved by this hobbit from a grave blunder. I had considered whether or not to probe this stone myself to find its uses. Had I done so, I should have been revealed to him myself.
I am not ready for such a trial, if indeed I shall ever be so. But even if I found the power to withdraw myself, it would be disastrous for him to see me. Yet, until the hour comes when secrecy will avail us no longer."
"That hour is now come, I think," said Aragorn.
"Not yet," said Gandalf. "There remains a short while of doubt which we must use. The enemy, it is clear, thought that the stone was an Orthanc. Why should he not? And that therefore the hobbit was captive there, driven to look in the glass by his torment by Saruman. That dark mind will be filled now with the voice and face of the hobbit, and with expectation. It may take some time before he learns his error. We must snatch that time. We have been too leisurely. We must move. The neighbourhood of Isengard is no place now to linger in. I will ride ahead at once with Peregrine Took. It will be better for him than lying in the dark while others sleep."
"I will keep Éomer and 10 riders," said the king. "They shall ride with me at early day. The rest may go with Aragorn and ride as soon as they have a mind."
"As you will," said Gandalf. "But make all the speed you may, to cover the hills to Helm's Deep."
Well, Huan and Luthien and Beren, and they're not in this story. I'm talking about this story here. Tevildo's House of Cats, yes. At that moment, a shadow fell over them. The bright moonlight seemed to be suddenly cut off. Several of the riders cried out and crouched, holding their arms above their heads as if to ward off a blow from above. A blind fear and a deadly cold fell on them. Cowering, they looked up. A vast winged shape passed over the moon like a black cloud. It wheeled and went north, flying at a speed greater than any wind of Middle-earth. The stars fainted before it. It was gone. They stood up, rigid as stones. Gandalf was gazing up, his arms out and downwards, stiff, his hands clenched.
"Nazgul," he cried, "the messenger of Mordor. The storm is coming. The Nazgul have crossed the river. Ride, ride, wait not for the dawn. Let not the swift wait for the slow. Ride."
He sprang away, calling Shadowfax as he ran. Aragorn followed him. Going to Pippin, Gandalf picked him up in his arms.
"You shall come with me this time," he said. "Shadowfax shall show you his paces."
Then he ran to the place where he had slept. Shadowfax stood there already. Slinging the small bag, which was all his luggage, across his shoulders, the wizard leapt on the horse's back. Aragorn lifted Pippin and set him in Gandalf's arms, wrapped in cloak and blanket.
"Farewell, follow fast," cried Gandalf. "Away, Shadowfax!"
The great horse tossed his head. His flowing tail flicked in the moonlight. Then he leapt forward, spurning the earth, and was gone like the north wind from the mountains. "A beautiful, restful night," said Merry to Aragorn. "Some folk have wonderful luck." He did not want to sleep, and he wanted to ride with Gandalf. And there he goes, instead of being turned into stone himself to stand here forever as a warning. "If you had been the first to lift the Orthanc stone and not he, how would it be now?" said Aragorn. "You might have done worse, who can say? But now it is your luck to come with me, I fear. At once. Go and get ready, and bring everything that Pippin left behind. Make haste." Over the plain Shadowfax was flying, needing no urging and guidance. Less than an hour passed, and they had reached the fords of Isen and crossed them. The mound of the riders and its cold spears lay grey behind them. Pippin was recovering. He was warm, but the wind in his face was keen and refreshing. He was with Gandalf. The horror of the stone and of the hideous shadow of the moon was fading, things left behind in the mists of the mountains or in a passing dream. He drew a deep breath. "I did not know you rode bareback, Gandalf," he said. "You haven't a saddle or a bridle."
"I do not ride elf-fashion except on Shadowfax," said Gandalf. "But Shadowfax will have no harness. You do not ride, Shadowfax. He is willing to carry you or not. If he is willing, that is enough. It is then his business to see that you remain on his back unless you jump off into the air."
"How fast is he going?" asked Pippin. "Fast by the wind, but very smooth, and how light his footfalls are." Oh, I have to do it now. Bilbo Baggins, the greatest little hobbit of them all. I think that Bilbo betrayed Thorin different in his story because Gandalf thought otherwise in Unfinished Tales. Quest for Erebor when he talks about it. So it's interesting. Gandalf wonders, actually. He doesn't say specifically what he thinks, but he wonders whether Bilbo was oblivious to the way that Thorin really was, or whether he changed the story because he felt poorly about depicting Thorin being really mean, you know? And that personally, I would say it's the latter. Bilbo makes very, he censors his story. He makes very great strides to tell it as a story. Like, we talked about this at great length when we read The Hobbit, specifically about the three trolls and the fact that he gave them like very sort of English sounding names, one of them even with a surname, which is not something that you would expect to hear from some trolls, you know. There's a lot of things in The Hobbit this is just Bilbo sort of either exaggerating the truth or censoring the truth. And I think with Thorin and the way that he behaved, at least in Bilbo's house, is a censorship of the truth. I think that, you know, he was truthful towards the end of it because there's no way to tell that story without telling the full truth. I think that Thorin, you know, kicking him out of Erebor and almost tossing him off the wall, that happened exactly as he said it did. The words on his deathbed happened exactly as he said it did. And because of the way it ended, he didn't, you know, he knew that he was going to tell this as a story. He kept saying, I'm going to write a book about this. You know, I'm going to finish my book. He's not writing a history or a diary. He's writing a book. He's writing a story based on what happened to him. And he's hoping that this is going to be a story that is going to capture the hearts and minds and imaginations of hobbits mostly, you know. So, of course, he changed a few things around because a lot of people, if they knew the way that Thorin was, they would say to Bilbo, what the heck were you thinking? Why would you let that guy, like, in your house? Who cares if he's the king of some faraway land? You know, for him to come into your house and to be disrespectful towards you is not proper, and you should have told him to get the heck out of there, you know? All right. Let's continue.
He is running now as fast as the swiftest horse could gallop, answered Gandalf. But that is not fast for him. The land is rising a little here, and is more broken than it was beyond the river. But see how the white mountains are drawing near under the stars. Yonder of the Therian peaks like black spears. It will not be long before we reach the branching roads and come to the Deeping Combe, where the battle was fought 2 nights ago. Pippin was silent again for a while. He heard Gandalf singing softly to himself, murmuring brief snatches of rhyme in many tongues, as the miles ran under them. At last the wizard passed into a song of which the hobbit caught the words. A few lines came clear to his ears through the rushing of the wind. Tall ships and tall kings, 3 times 3. What brought they from the foundered land over the flowering sea? 7 stars and 7 stones and 1 white tree. What are you saying, Gandalf? Asked Pippin. I was just running over some of the rhymes of lore in my mind, answered the wizard. Hobbits, I suppose, have forgotten them, even those that they ever knew. No, not all, said Pippin, and we have many of our own, which wouldn't interest you, perhaps. But I have never heard this one. What is it about, the 7 stars and the 7 stones? About the Palantiri of the kings of old, said Gandalf. And what are they? The name means that which looks far away. The Orthanc stone was one. Then it was not made... Pippin hesitated. By the enemy? No, said Gandalf. Not by Saruman. It is beyond his art, and beyond Sauron's too. The Palantiri come from beyond Westerness, from Eldamar. The Noldor made them. Feanor himself, maybe, wrought them, in days so long ago that the time cannot be measured in years. But there is nothing that Sauron cannot turn to evil uses. Alas for Saruman! It was his downfall, as I now perceive, perilous to us all of the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves. Yes, we must not bear the blame. Fool! To keep it secret for his own profit. No word did he ever speak of it to any of the council. It was not known to us that any of the Palantiri had escaped the ruin of Gondor. Outside the council it was not even remembered among the elves or men that such things have ever been, save only a rhyme of lore preserved among Aragorn's folk.
What did the men of old use them for? Asked Pippin, delighted and astonished at getting answers to so many questions, and wondering how long it would last.
To see far off, and to converse in thought with one another, said Gandalf. In that way they long guarded and united the realm of Gondor. They set up stones at Minas Anor and at Minas Ithil, and at Orthanc in the Ring of Isengard. The chief and master of these was under the dome of stars at Osgiliath before its ruin. The others were far away. Few now know where, for no rhyme says. But in the house of Elrond it is told that they were at Anaminas, at Amon Sul, and on the tower hills that look towards Mithlond in the Gulf of Lune where the grey ships lie. Each Palantir spoke to each other, but at Osgiliath they could survey them all together at one time. Now it appears that the rock of Orthanc has withstood the storms of time, so there the Palantir of that tower has remained. But alone it could do nothing but see small images of things far off and days remote. Very useful, no doubt, that was to Saruman. Yet it seems that he was not content. Further and further abroad he gazed, until he cast his gaze upon Barad-dûr. Then he was caught. Who knows where all those other stones now lie, broken or buried or drowned deep? But
I know.
But one at least Sauron must have obtained and mastered to his purposes. I guess it was the Ithil stone, for he took Minas Ithil long ago and turned it into an evil place. Minas Morgul it has become. Easy it is now to guess how quickly the roving eye of Saruman, trying to turn the page here, was trapped and held, and how ever since he has been persuaded from afar, and daunted when persuasion would not serve. The biter bit, the hawk under the eagle's foot, the spider in a steel web. How long, I wonder, has he been constrained to come often to his glass for inspection and instruction? And the Orthanc stone so bent towards Barad-dûr that if any save the will of adamant now looks at it, it will bear his mind and sight swiftly thither? And how it draws one to itself! Have I not felt it, even if my heart desires to test my will upon it, to see that I could not wrench it from him and turn it where I would, to look across the wide seas of water and of time to Tirion the fair, and perceive the unimaginable hand and mind of Feanor at their work, while both the white tree and the golden were in flower?
He sighed and fell silent. I wish I had known all this before, said Pippin. I had no notion of what I was doing.
Oh, yes, you had, said Gandalf. You knew you were behaving wrongly and foolishly, and you told yourself so, though you did not listen. I did not tell you all this before, because it is only by musing on it all that it happened that I have at last understood, even as we ride together. But if I had spoken sooner, it would not have lessened your desire or made it easier to resist. On the contrary, no, the burned hand teaches best. After that, advice about fire goes to the heart.
It does, says Pippin. If all the 7 stones were laid out before me now, I should shut my eyes and put my hands in my pockets.
Good, said Gandalf. That is what I hoped.
But I should like to know, Pippin began.
Mercy, cried Gandalf. If the giving of information is to be the cure to your inquisitiveness, I shall spend all the rest of my days in answering you. What more do you want to know?
The names of all the stars and of all the living things and the whole history of Middle-earth and over heaven and the sundering seas, laughed Pippin. Of course, what less? But I am not in a hurry tonight. At that moment I was just wondering about the Black Shadow. I heard you shout Messenger of Mordor. What was it? What could it do at Isengard?
It was a black rider on the wings, a Nazgul, said Gandalf. It could have taken you away to the Dark Tower.
But it was not coming for me, was it? Faltered Pippin. I mean, it didn't know that I had...
Of course not, said Gandalf. It is 200 leagues or more in straight flight from Barad-dûr to Orthanc, and even a Nazgul would take a few hours to fly between them. But Saruman certainly looked in the stone since the Orc raid, and more of his secret thought, I do not doubt, has been read than he intended. A messenger has been sent to find out what he is doing, and after what has happened tonight, another will come, I think, and swiftly. So Saruman who come to that last pinch of the vice that he has put his hand in. He has no captive to send, he has no stone to see with, and cannot answer the summons. Sauron will only believe that he is withholding the captive and refusing to use the stone. It will not help Saruman to tell the truth to the messenger, for Isengard may be ruined, yet he is still safe in Orthanc. So whether he will or no, he will appear a rebel. Yet he rejected us, so as to avoid that very thing. What he will do in such a plight I cannot guess. He has a power still, I think, while in Orthanc, to resist the Nine Riders. He may try to do so. He may try to trap the Nazgul, or at least slay the thing on which it now rides in the air. In that case, let Rohan look to its horses. But I cannot tell how it will fall out, well or ill for us. It may be that the counsels of the enemy will be confused or hindered by his wrath with Saruman. It may be that he will learn that I was there, and stood upon the stairs of Orthanc with hobbits at my tail. Or that an heir of Elendil lives and stood beside me. If Wormtongue was not deceived by the armour of Rohan, he would remember Aragorn and the title that he claimed. That is what I fear. And so we fly, not from danger, but into greater danger. Every stride of Shadowfax bears you nearer to the land of Shadow Peregrine Took. Pippin made no answer, but clutched his cloak as if a sudden chill had struck him. Grey land passed under them. See now, said Gandalf, the Westfold dales are opening before us. Here we come back to the eastward road, the dark shadow yonder in the mouth of the Deeping Combe. That way lies Anglorond and the glittering caves. Do not ask me about them. Ask Gimli if you meet again, and for the first time you may get an answer longer than you wish. You will not see the caves yourself, not on this journey. Soon they will be far behind.
I thought we were going to stop at Helm's Deep, said Pippin. Where are we going, then?
To Minas Tirith, before the seas of war surround it.
Oh, and how far is that?
Leagues upon leagues, answered Gandalf, thrice as far as the dwellings of King Theoden, and there are more than 100 miles east from here, as the messengers of Mordor fly. Shadowfax must run a long road. Which will prove the swifter? We shall ride now until daybreak, and that is some hours away. Then even Shadowfax must rest in some hollow of the hills at Eris, I hope. Sleep if you can. You may see the first glimmer of dawn upon the golden roof of the House of Eorl. And in 2 days thence you shall see the purple shadow of Mount Mindolluin, and the walls of the Tower of Denethor white in the morning. Away now, Shadowfax! Run, Greatheart! Run, as you have never run before. Now we are come to the lands where you are foaled, and every stone you know. Run now! Hope is in speed. Shadowfax tossed his head and cried aloud as if a trumpet had summoned him to battle. Then he sprang forward. Fire flew from his feet. Night rushed over him. As he fell slowly into sleep, Pippin had a strange feeling. He and Gandalf were still as stone, seated upon the statue of a running horse, while the world rolled away beneath his feet with a great noise of wind. And that's it. That's the end of Book 3. Where we have Gandalf with Pippin going off towards Minas Tirith, and of course that will be continued in the Return of the King, because for Book 4, which is the second half of the Two Towers, we're going to shift over to Frodo. And we're not only shifting over to Frodo, but we're actually going to sort of go backwards in time, because Book 3 and Book 4 take place at the same time. They're simultaneously happening. So at this moment, this is right around the time when Frodo and Sam and Gollum are getting very close to... Wayne's trying to make me laugh. Very close to Mordor. Aurora Borealis, in this part of Mordor, at this time of year, located entirely in Minas Tirith. It's more likely than you think. Let me catch up on chat a little bit here. I feel like I need Gollum juice now, and I haven't really done the Gollum voice that much, you know. You could say there are some surnames. So surnames is very much a Hobbit thing. Elves don't have surnames. They sometimes will have several
names. Elrond Perithel. Perithel just means half elf. That's not his last name. It's not a family name. His father wasn't Irendel Perithel, although his father was half elf. It's a description of who he is. Círdan, well, it's Círdan the shipwright, because he is a shipwright. He builds ships. So it is true that, most of the surnames we know in English, at least, described a profession, but Perithel is not a description. But you have to remember that in the realm of Middle-earth, we get these things like Gimli, son of Gloin, Legolas of the Woodland Realm. Aragorn has a really long name. But he doesn't have a family name until he chooses one, which is Telcontar, his full name at the end of the book. Aragorn II Elisar, High King of the Dunedain, Telcontar, So it's like, it's this whole thing, Sometimes you'll hear like, of the house of Haleth, of the house of Finrod, this sort of thing, right?
May I see it?
No. So the idea of there being surnames is a very Hobbit thing, because hobbits are really into genealogy and tracing their family trees and everything. So that's why you get like a Baggins family tree, a Took family tree, a Brandybuck family tree, and such and such and such in the appendices. And you don't see it like Bjorn doesn't have like a family name, Denethor doesn't have a family name. He's Denethor of the house of Aryan, but steamed clams. What's funny is that, like, if I was Super Nintendo Chalmers in that situation and he came at me with hamburgers, I'd be like, well, I'd say the same thing. Like, what happened to the steamed clams? I love steamed clams. I like hamburgers too, but I love steamed clams. So I would have been very excited for those steamed clams. It's steamed from the steamed clams we're having. Steamed clams. I love that both chats are doing this now. So my point in bringing up surnames is that really only hobbits have surnames, and ascribing a surname to a troll, William Huggins, is ridiculous. It's an extremely English-sounding name. It's and where do you see these English-sounding names? You see them with hobbits. You know what I mean? So that was really, like I said, that was just Bilbo trying to make them more like people, because they were probably too scary for his book. And that's what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? They were probably way too scary for his book. You have a cold, you're hearing C's as B's. So everybody will know where you bum from. What was that? How does it go? I'll have a large boke, a chocolate bit bookie. All right, let's put the book away. So I thank everybody for coming by. It was a lot of fun. We got through the rest of book 3. So schedule. Let's talk about that. Bocklet, chip, bookie. He was able to say chip, but not chocolate. Yeah, Bocklet, bip. Yeah, I gotta say bip. Okay, so next Thursday is Thanksgiving. So, and I normally don't do Tolkien streams on the last Thursday of the month because we have a different podcast for Twitch that we do. So because it's Thanksgiving, I'm probably not going to stream at all. Depends, but probably not, especially considering my co-hosts will probably not be available anyway. But in 2 weeks, December 4th, we'll be here with the Council of Tolkien. I talked to Sid about, because he had a 3-part thing that he was doing regarding hobbits. And I told him, I think, aren't you due for the 3rd part of that? I know it's been like a long time. And he's like, no, we're done with that. We did all 3 parts. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, no, I have something new. And that's why we did, his section was something new. And I said, hey, you do whatever you want for your section. But then afterwards, he said to me, you know what? I think you might be right. I think we didn't do the third part of that. So he might be returning that. But either way, in 2 weeks, on December 4th, we'll be back here with the Council of Tolkien. On the 11th, I will read more Two Towers for you guys. On the 18th, we'll do a Tolkien gaming stream. I'll figure out what we're playing. And then the next Thursday is Christmas. I don't stream on Christmas Day, so... actually, I might stream on Christmas Day, but it wouldn't be a Tolkien stream. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? I'll let you guys know closer to the date. I definitely don't stream on Christmas Eve. But those of you watching on YouTube, that is the schedule for the next little while. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, Council of Tolkien. 3 weeks, more Two Towers. 4 weeks, a Tolkien gaming stream. For those of you that are on Twitch, well, you guys pretty much know the schedule, but I'll be live tomorrow playing, tomorrow afternoon with Dragon Quest. And Saturday night, we'll continue Xenoblade. Sunday night, Mega Man. You guys know the same things that we've been doing. The only thing that has changed in the Twitch schedule is that Wednesdays will not be I Am Setsuna any longer. They're going to be Power Wash Simulator 2. That being said... I think it's time for us to sail to the lands that Tolkien talked about by the Gulf of Lune, Mithlond, where the gray ships arrive. And that's actually what you guys see there. Mithlond is an Elvish word. It means the Grey Havens. And it's interesting, the very last chapter of The Lord of the Rings is called the Grey Havens. Also, there was another chapter that was... a chapter name that was an incredibly important chapter name that was dropped because Gandalf referred to Mordor as the Land of Shadow, and that's one of the biggest chapters where they're going across the plain of Gorgoroth. And then the next chapter after that is Mount Doom. That's where the ring is actually destroyed. But anyway, you guys are trying to make me laugh here. Steamed hams. Anyway, guys, for those of you on YouTube, the live is going to end. For those of you on Twitch, we will be raiding somebody. Let's see who it is that we will be raiding. Captain Retro. I always raid him if I have the chance to because he doesn't stream all that often. So let's raid Captain Retro. He's playing... What is he playing? The Last of Us. Okay. We'll give you guys a raid call for the Twitch stream here. What if Raising Cane's did a collaboration with Sutter Kane? That would be a very different ending to The Malice of Madness. Very different ending, right? Sam Neill doesn't go insane. He just sits there eating very, very mid chicken strips. Okay, for those of you on Twitch, copy that, paste it as we head into Captain Retro's stream. For those of you on YouTube, I bid you farewell, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Of course, keep an eye on the posts for the quizzes. And of course, there'll be a new video on Wednesday and everything. Here we go.